In our meeting with invocation and the pledge led by Commissioner Buddy Goddard. Please stand if you're able. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this glorious day and opportunity to be in it, Father God. We just thank you for the commissioners. We thank you for our staff. We thank you for our concerned citizens, Father God. We just hope that we use this information that's going to be presented to us today for the best decisions of our citizens, Father God. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. You'll join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Goddard. Okay, we'll move down to our first agenda item, or only agenda item, the BARDIN Bridge update. And I'm going to ask Mike Nimitz to update us on some of the new information that we have.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Gentlemen, you have a PowerPoint presentation there, a printed copy of it. If IT could, I'd like to pull it up on the screen there, if that's possible. Okay, thank you. Give me 1 minute here. Okay, you have our first slide here, the table of contents. A couple items I'd like to cover today is the letter to FDOT. That's in regards to us rescinding the FDOT Holloway funds and reallocating $4.8 million towards County Road 309D and through our County Road 310 bridge. There are some applicable provisions I'd like to review with the board, just to reiterate some of the things we're going to be doing. The next item we'd like to cover is the County Road 309D Bardin Road Bridge current estimates for full rehab. I'd also like to revisit the temporary riprap discussion. And there is the County Road 310 bridge, current estimates for full rehab and current estimates for a crutch bent. I'd like to have discussions on whether to move forward with a full rehab or the crutch bent option for County Road 310. And I'd also like to review the potential cost impacts. The estimated cost for County Road 309D and 310 complete rehab versus estimated cost for 309D rehab and 310 crutch bent option. And also the cost impact of Putnam County by proceeding with crutch bent option at 310 and no riprap at 309D. So moving forward here.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Turner.
can we kind of take these as we go, Mike, where we don't have a big giant discussion later? Let's start with the riprap on Bardin. I understand that our engineer has made the comment that he thinks we could do as much damage as good with putting riprap there because we could knock the scalding off the existing piers and create more damage and make the bridge weaker by doing that than if we put it in there.
That is correct. There are current risks with installing this temporary riprap. The piers, the pilings are exposed. There's spalling on the piles. If you can imagine dropping big boulder into the water, coming down, hitting piles, you could potentially cause, significant damage to the piles and have to close the bridge. So there's an inherent risk with that. There's also the issue of you're limited in how much actual riprap you can put in because we may be doing new construction here next to it, okay? So you can't do it to the limits that was called for in the DOT report. Otherwise, you'll be creating a lot of conflict with what you're trying to do with that. So there's also the issue, one of the things that the engineer noted was it would really be beneficial if you anticipate some major storm events. We're kind of here at the tail end of the hurricane season, so there's a little bit of risk there. But he said if we didn't have any major events, we should be relatively okay.
Well, I'm not quite so sure that the risk wouldn't be greater of us damaging the bridge and spending $360,000 to damage our own bridge versus it'd probably take a Hurricane Irma event or a real bad nor'easter or something in order to scour this thing out enough to where it made any difference from where it is now, or a big difference from where it is now. So I think we can just far as I'm concerned, we can just forget about taking that risk and spending $360,000. That's my opinion. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it pleases the board, Mike, I'd like to stay on one bridge at a time today, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just stay on Barden right now, and then let's put that one to bed, then let's go to 310, okay?
Okay.
Is that all right with you, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
that's fine. I think that's
Thank
right. Commissioner Goddard?
Pretty sure that's what we all wanted. Now, the riprap, if I'm not correct, even if we put it in there, it's not going to change the load level one bit.
No, it will
So
not
it's
increase the
not
load
really
rating at all. It's-
advantageous other than slowing down the water flow.
Well, the scouring that has been experienced with the high flow volumes. That's
Right, but the engineers are very adamant that that could cause more damage than good.
Again, if you can visualize a contractor dropping boulders into the
Right.
water, how much control you'd have over it, for you gentlemen who work in the industry, you know the risk associated with this. So it's,
Because they're lazy and they don't want to put them in there one stone at a time, so I got it.
They can't.
yes, I wouldn't say lazy, but it's a difficult process to control.
Yes,
in
sir,
some
I
respects.
understand. No, everything that I've looked at just, it doesn't point that that's the best solution at this time to me. Okay, thanks.
Agreed, and it is a cost factor of a notable amount as well.
Okay, Commissioner Rawls?
When was the last time riprap was installed at this bridge location?
I believe it was after Hurricane Matthew, and it was at the bridge approaches. And it wasn't down there in the piles, but it was at the approaches.
approaches.
Embankment, yes.
So the center is pretty much as it was when it was put in the 60s.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I had a conversation the other day with the engineer that was discussed by Mr. Allison the other day. I can't think of his name.
Was it Heckmer?
Yes, there you go. And I asked him, would it not be advantageous to form up and place a collar and footing system around the existing pilings? He said, absolutely. I said, could you get to the point that you could get a higher weight rating? He said, yes. So in lieu of the scalding issues or the concern of scalding, you would prevent that. I also contacted Melissa Morgan, and she stated that if the county had an alternative engineering view to take a look at the bridge, reducing it to one lane, and they could get to a higher rating, DOT has no problem with that. She said other counties have done this in the past. So there are other alternatives available that we've not yet looked at. I did reach out to Tim Rice at Eisman and Russo Engineering. Have not got a response back, but I didn't call him until yesterday afternoon, so hoping to get a response back. But I think at this point, as we move forward, we should also consider the fact that at some point we may be able to pull the trigger on something that could be a huge cost savings that would buy us a lot of time, get the bridge rating up above where we could get buses or garbage trucks across it and not have to worry about being in a hurry to spend a lot of money. So I would encourage this commission to think about that. I've said it in the past. This thing has been in front of this county for a long time. This issue has been a problem for a long time, and coming screaming at the last second that we have a fire and we have to put it out. I agree we got a fire, but how we put it out has yet to be determined. And I think we should slow this a tiny bit and take a look at all possibilities rather than just throwing a new bridge out there, because so far I've only seen one opinion from one engineering group, which is Ayers and Associates, and she said it really depends on who looks at it and what their opinion is when they look at it.
Okay, my response is we have several engineers who've looked at this. DOT, we have written recommendations from DOT as well as their consultant Ayers. We have them from our consultant as well. Time is of the essence. We have to make a decision. If we want this DOT funding to move forward, gentlemen, you got to make the decision today.
I'm not saying let's not move the funding forward.
Okay.
What I'm saying is,
And I'm not opposed to
Right, what I'm
alternate
saying
ideas.
is-
I've researched.
funding
I've-
going forward,
I've,
and
I've,
then,
I've talked to these other people
Right.
with all these other ideas. We vetted the most recent one, Mr. Hector. I think you all saw the email traffic on it. He basically said that he was provided the incorrect information. He said that he would not be able to increase the load with going with one-way traffic. He said that would preserve it from being damaged further, is what he said.
what he told me was,
I
he
have it in
cannot
writing
provide
from
it to talk. He actually gave me the name of Eisman and Russo and said, this would be who you'd have to talk to. He said, this is not my wheelhouse. you have to talk to Eisman and Russo. So, and Melissa indicated that they did not come out and do the assessment. Ayers and Associates did. Their assumptions are based on what they see from Ayers and Associates. So as far as I can tell, we've only had one set of eyes on this bridge so far.
And I'm open to looking at other alternatives. My point of this meeting today is to not really go down that road right now, but we will definitely do that. But we need to advance this agenda here. We need to walk out of this meeting.
I got no
securing this
problem
deal.
with
Very good. Okay.
taking the Holloway Road money and utilizing it
All
for
on board
this.
with you, Commissioner Wells,
But
all on board.
we're discussing the Barton Bridge. So under those discussions, I think that we should be diligent and do every bit of homework we can. I wish we had 6 or 8 months more time. I wish we were looking at something next summer to make a decision, but we don't. So we're looking at this 1 week at a time. But a lot can happen in a week, and my eyes were open yesterday to some new possibilities.
I'm definitely open to that. If there's suggestions or ideas out there, we'll definitely go through them, we'll vet them,
Has anybody thought about preserving the pilings that we have there now with the scalding and the scouring by building a footing system and?
3 weeks ago, Commissioner, I brought it up in workshop.
No, I mean as far as engineering groups, because when I was on the phone with Mr. Hector,
No, sir, I talked to CSI in the meeting about it, the first meeting there, and they said it wasn't an option because the existing deck had degraded and the number 4 crutch bent had settled 3 inches, and only 1.2 inch was the maximum settlement was allowed. I read the report and talked to them. So that was something we came up with weeks ago that's been shot down by 2 different engineers. I called Castro too. I got his name from Dino, and I called him myself and talked to him and explained to him that he was of the understanding that the problem was the scalding of the piles, not the scouring of the piles. And so he said, oh yeah, you can wrap the piles with this material and put a collar around them and, tie them in, do concrete. And I said, well, that's fine and dandy, but that's not the issue. The issue is the scouring of the piles underneath. And that's when he came back with the email that's on record. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but there's an email back from him that says he cannot offer an opinion on this, Mr. Castro, because of the information that was due. We even sent him a copy of the DOT, or the AIRS report that DOT generated. We sent to him, and that generated an email back from him that said he wouldn't be able to offer us an opinion on that, and he didn't feel like if he did, it would be any different than the opinions that we have already received.
so what I proposed to him was this. I said, if we built a small cofferdam around each individual pile, and we built, not putting a wrap around it, not encasing it in concrete only, but actually building a footing and pinning the column to the pile to the.
We talked about it 3 weeks ago.
I didn't hear any of this conversation.
Yeah, we had a long conversation in workshop about it.
No, what I didn't hear was building a footing around each one.
6 or 8 foot. I even brought up the size and everything, and that's when they
He
said that it
says-
would be over 11 foot at the shallowest place before we could get to soil that would be good, and the bridge would have to be closed.
But he says, using flowable fill, and maybe even using auger cast technology, that we could get to a point where we could put in a temporary solution. It's gonna cost money, but it would give us time to develop a long-term solution to a permanent bridge and not be in the hurry that we are now and spend more money doing that.
Well, I certainly don't mind if I may.
I'm just saying
I certainly don't mind going along with you and trying to continue look, but we looked at spread footers and all this stuff 3 weeks ago. So this is backing up 3 weeks. If somebody can tell me we can go that route, I'm willing to look again. We talked in workshop about the cofferdams. We talked about the collars, the scalding versus the scouring.
I remember the
We did
collars,
all
but,
that.
okay, so, what I'm saying is if we can, we've got CSI. I don't know him from Adam's House Cat. I don't trust them, I don't not trust them, I don't know them. I just have their opinion. It's in their best interest for them to come to us with a project that would be in their best interest. This is what you and I do for a living, so I get it, but if we only have one opinion from one design group, I'm saying let's get this.
As early as yesterday, I made the comment to the administrator that The only thing that makes me comfortable about this is that they're the third sets of engineers that said the same thing. DOT said it, Ayers said it on behalf of DOT, and then CSI came in and concurred.
But Ayers gave DOT made it very clear, they don't do the study. It's done by the engineer. They go
Ayers,
strictly
right.
on Ayers. So we've only had one set of data. CSI
Well,
has.
another one's coming any day now. They're gonna go do another set of data in November.
Who is they?
Ain't Ayers supposed to come back in for DOT and do another inspection?
Yes, this bridge is to be inspected monthly, the scouring is, and the condition of it.
Yeah,
So
the
we're
last-
gonna have updates as we go in this thing, and, hopefully, you know, I'm on board with you as far as continuing looking. We'll move the agenda today and get the
Yeah,
funding in
the
place
funding.
and do all that stuff, but then I'm continuing, because I've had a friend of mine that asked me not to say his name at this point, that reached out to me and said they have auger cast technology that can go in there
Right.
and put this down and tie it in, and I said, well, what about the 3-inch settlement on the fourth crutch bent? He said, we can raise that too. Said, the firm that I have, or that he works for, it ain't him, but he works for, actually has the ability, like Ramjack, to raise up a footer or whatever. They have that ability. So I was hoping to have some more information on it today, but
It's
they
a
said
shame
they
we
were
can't
gonna
be-
go.
Yeah,
They
it's a
said
shame
they
you and
were.
I can't just do this all day long, because you and I are both working the same direction at the same
I
time.
know we are,
So-
but we can't do it together. I mean, that's the
And I get-
sunshine
and
vow.
Hector
Until we
said-
get in this room, we can't shake hands and kiss. I mean, we just can't do it.
For the record,
So,
we don't kiss.
whatever.
Can you scratch that from the record, please?
So anyhow, my whole
Nothing
point,
wrong with a kiss.
The kissing part.
so my whole point here is that yes, I think we are working in the same direction. And we're trying to go there. And the auger cast, if it would work, I know somebody that's developed a machine that could do it and do all, I mean, all this stuff, brand new technology type stuff. I'm on board, I'm game. But we need to move this agenda forward today.
I know, I'm
where
in
we've
favor
got
of getting this going, but I'm just saying, as we move forward, let's please consider all possibilities and not just jump on a $3.5 million, here we are. I know 3 or 4 months from now, we're
Jeff,
gonna
I've
have.
done everything in my power the last month to think of everything I could come up with, and I ran down every single person that called me with a recommendation, even if I didn't feel like the recommendation was valid, because of my experience, and you and I do this for a living. So I ran down every single one of them until it dead ended. I mean, I think somebody stood up at that podium last Tuesday and waved their cell phone at us. I think it was Troy or somebody, and said, I got an engineer that'll sign off on this right now. I got hold of Hector Castro, and that was not an accurate statement.
Right.
It came from Dino to Troy, and Dino had not told him the facts, and the last report he had seen was a 2017 report. And so he just didn't understand the current shape of the bridge. He just didn't understand it. Castro didn't. And so once you tell him, he says, oh, well, I think I'm gonna probably have to do the same, make the same recommendation. I'm good at moving forward. I was hoping that we could do the spread footers, but I swear it's been at least 3 weeks ago we talked about it. And we even went as far as talking about what size rebar it'd take to pin the collars to the thing. I mean, we went to all that.
But when you start talking auger cast, you change the game, because
I understand.
now your footer is sitting on top of pilings, and then your piling is attached to the footer that's on top of piling. So what I'm saying is, we could possibly get either a life extension out of this bridge, with a higher weight rating than we have now, or get a whole new weight rating that extends this bridge out 10 years, and it would take that off of us, and we can we're looking at 310 and other bridges that we have problems with.
I'm on board with, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm on board with continuing to look. But if we don't start this process, we lose that $4.8 million from DOT, then that's gonna come out of our pocket, because something's gonna have to be done.
I'm in favor of the. moving
Even
that
if
forward.
this commissioner would like to move the BARDIN bridge forward, get it funded, as soon as DOT will turn us loose, start the design for what we talked about last, which is a full weight, 1-lane bridge. And if we can get the money from DOT, it'll be paid for, it'll be a new bridge, and we won't have to worry about that. This is not the first time Etnire Creek Bridge has raised its ugly head. It did it back in the 80s, and they had to go in there and do a bunch of work to it back then. And they had to build a temporary road around it while they did this back in the 80s. Kelly Smith, when he reached out to me and told me when he was commissioner it happened. And that all they did was push an access road around the side and put some culverts in it. It worked out fine. I said, well, did you go to water man? Well, this was in the 80s. So,
Yeah.
you know, all the stuff we'd have to do now, they just pushed it in, and if anybody said anything, they were gonna beg for forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know, we can't do that. So I'd like to see this move forward under this, and then, yes, I'm with you. Let's continue looking.
I'm in support. I'll make a motion right now that we go ahead and move forward with the transferring the money from Holloway Road to this project and notify DOT that we're.
And we're gonna have to do, but we did that the other day.
Did that the other day.
Again, there's several items we got to go through here.
That's right.
Let him finish the presentation, and then we'll,
Yeah, because the allocation is going to have to be proportionate to the decisions you make here on a couple of other items. Okay, so let's stay focused on Bardin Road Bridge, and let's wrap this one up. Back to where we were at, temp riprap, we don't want it, right? Correct?
Right. No
So that's,
riprap.
if you look at the figures there on page 4, you'll see the design fee estimates around 342, construction estimates 2.8, CEI is around 210. So the total would be 3.4. So we're going to ask for an amount proportional to that from DOT.
Correct.
Out of the 4.8. So
Correct.
we're good on that. We'll go ahead and we'll move to the next bridge. But just one thing to
I have a question before
yes.
we move on, Mr.
right,
Chairman.
I have one after you.
To
unless it's the
reiterate
same
here.
question. So, Commissioner Turner.
After this letter goes out, I know we want to look at other alternatives and everything, but the goal of this is to have this funding agreement within 4 weeks. When we get that funding agreement, we got to pull the trigger. We got to move forward with design immediately, push the design as quickly as we can to get us something in 3 months, break ground and within, a month of after that or so. Get this alternate route knocked out in 4 months if we can. That's the goal here, is move as quickly as we can. I know there's a lot of alternatives we want to research, but if they can happen quicker than what we're doing, that's great. But if they can't, that's what we're facing.
I
with.
get all that,
well,
Mike.
well,
I
all
don't
right,
need a
Commissioner-
lecture.
Commissioner
Yes.
Turner.
Okay, I think what my intent is to move forward with this project under these terms, but we're not gonna stop looking at ways that we
Agreed.
can open the bridge in the next, if we can throw a couple of $100,000, now this is just me speaking. If we can throw a couple of $100,000 at that bridge and make it where we can open it one lane full weight with a deal on each end, I vote yes. I'll vote yes. So that's the portion of it that I don't want to stop looking at. Yes, we can move forward with the funding, get DOT, let them start designing a bridge when DOT gives us the go-ahead. I'm all right with all that. And then we, and on the, I know we're trying to do one at a time, but it all ties together. On the 310 bridge, the crutch bents, it is the way to go. I mean, it just is, because we can't afford $2.8 million or what, $2.4 million. We can't afford that out of our budget for our part of if we built both them bridges brand new.
And I'm in complete agreement with researching these alternatives here, because we do have these conditions at other bridges. So if we find something, the silver bullet on this one, and if we don't get to implement it here,
Right.
there's opportunities to implement it somewhere else. I'm all for it.
Well, I'm hoping that the AugerCast deal will work out for us. It's just too quick, too fast, got to go there, so in my opinion. So, I think we need to move this forward. This is just my opinion. I think we need to move this forward, but before we do, I'd like to ask one very important issue. How confident are you in your numbers that you have? Because it seems like every bid we've hit lately comes in when we bid it, it's double. I mean, we're gonna talk about one today, I understand possibly, that came in double. So it seemed like everything we're doing is coming anywhere from 50 to 100% higher than the engineer's estimate.
Given CSI's experience, and they provided us these numbers, I'm pretty confident. We're doing a similar bridge. It's not quite the size. It's 80-foot span on 207, and it came in at 1.2, I think is what the construction bid was. The CEI, we were able to get it lower. It should have been right around 200. We got it for 85 because we're not using DOT money. The design, I think, was around 200. So these numbers, they're pretty much kind of proportional to it.
So
I
you
don't
feel
think they're that
decent
far off.
about them.
I feel pretty good about them. Again, they are estimates, And you gentlemen being contractors, you know until you have an executed contract, it's an estimate.
I get it, but I don't usually
Prices
miss them
always go down.
100%.
Always go down. After you have any kind of contract, our guys drop their prices to get in that. That's the difference.
So,
Commissioner Rawls, I think
All
is
right,
next.
so
Mike.
I'm just going to say this. I feel pressure to make a decision that I don't want to have to make today. I don't like the fact that this was known for a long time, and it's not an unforeseen condition. It was in everybody's face, according to what DOT says, for years and years and years. So I personally would like to make sure that as we go forward, we're looking at as much of this stuff as far ahead of time as we can. Telling me that we have 6 weeks to pull the trigger on this, what's not accurate?
That's not accurate.
yeah,
It's been our face for years and years and years. It's just not an accurate
Apparently in
statement.
2017, there was concern about this bridge.
There's concern
concerns
about
about
40
it.
of them, but
What
the
I'm-
weight limit wasn't dropped until after we had the,
we
it's
cannot-
just not an
That's
accurate
when we,
statement.
isn't that when we put the riprap on it? Did we put it in
Apparently on the
17?
approach, not in the center section, but all I'm saying is this, we've got to come up with a way to not, we have 16 more opportunities to be slapped in the face here over the next few years with bridges.
my response to that is it comes down to, the funding. We have the reports. We need the funding to address these issues.
I think we need to get reports to us as soon as possible then on all the bridges and start working on it. Anyways, I just want to say that because it is very uncomfortable for me sitting here, having you tell us, I got to pull the trigger in the next 6 weeks because now what you're telling us, our back's up against the wall and we have no time to react.
And again, the extent of the scouring to where it's at where we're at now, none of us knew until September, okay? We didn't get the solutions till then that were, feasible to proceed with. We're 1 month into this and we have a solution to where it's funded, I think we got a significant amount of funding being put towards this from FDOT. This has been an extensive effort on everyone's part. Commissioner Harvey did a fantastic job, getting it to where we could get this $4.8 million. Given the circumstances and what we're dealing with, I'm pleased with where we're at. I feel encouraged. I think we've done a lot here in a short time.
I'm scared because I know we're facing.
I would like to have more money, unlimited money. I would like to fix everything in this county if I could, but we have to prioritize. And this is where we're at.
What happens when the next one comes up and we don't have DOT to reach out to? That's my
Mr. Chairman, I might be able to answer some of that.
Okay. Administrator Suggs?
Yes, sir. As far as future bridge issues and concerns and repairs, we've had conversations with an organization that may be able to effectively help us out with funding of those issues as well in the future. We just need to be able to put a plan together and a project list together of future issues that we may be encountering with a bridge throughout the county. And the Army Corps of Engineers has shared a program with us as early as last Wednesday that we may be able to reach out to them for funding for future projects. I do understand the conversation here today, and I do think it's prudent that we make a decision here today as I'm hearing the commission talk, because the folks at BARDIN need an answer today.
Yeah.
It's not just Public Works that needs an answer today, but this was an issue that was brought to our attention in September, and I think Mr. Nimitz is absolutely correct in the short period of time that we've been dealing with this. A lot has gone into this project, multiple options and more options to be discussed. Funding opportunities have been discussed. I think DOT's on board with us. But to me, I think it's prudent today that we at least make a decision on how we want to proceed for the funding today so we can get this project moving
I
forward.
got no problem with moving forward with the funding with using the Holloway Road money, but I don't want to close the door over, if we have to put a contract out in 6 weeks, then so be it. But in the next 5 weeks and 6 days, I think we should explore every possibility, look at alternative means and methods to coming up with something creative solution if possible.
100% in agreement and looking at other options as long as we have options available.
I think, based on what Commissioner Turner and I were talking about, if we can come up with a solution like that, that becomes the silver bullet, so to speak, for some of these other issues maybe in the future. Maybe we'll let them do it at no cost to them for experimenting with our bridge. But I'm good.
All right, Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to go back and say, I've got the bridge report on my desk, and there's some concerns through some of the bridges, but not all the bridges. And, it looked pretty promising to me, frankly, when I looked over. I actually even contacted DOT to get a list of all the state road bridges, and they're no different. And what we learn in our classes at FAC is that you deal with these things as they come up. That's the best we can. We also found additional funding with the Department of Transportation on a builds grant that they have, and I've shared that with Matt and Susan and Stacy. Susan and Stacy this morning, they didn't get a lot of time to, but the idea was that they would loan us money if we need it at half of a T-bill, what half the T-bill rate is. So they're practically, Matt's words were, they're practically giving you the money, you know, to take your
Still
monies
gonna
away
service
from
the
investment. I do want to say, though, I think it's important that we don't lose context of the conversation. When this originally arose, we were standing on County Road 310 Bridge, and Melissa told me she has some concerns about the BARDIN Bridge and would get back to us at a later date. I mean, that's the words that we're told. That later date happened in a few days. It didn't happen in a few weeks, as I was led to believe. And I'm not the only one that she had private conversations with. We couldn't meet together there, so we stood far apart. And I think that's important to know. These things do come up, and they're going to continue to come up. But we need to be prepared and ready to move when that time comes. And I'm excited about this. I'm excited about taking the money from the Holloway area. And you say, why would you be excited about that? Because that's a road that's really going to service a woods industry, a state forest, and a few residents down there. Now, do the residents need some stabilization on the road? Sure they do. We've talked about that. And this board should be committed to something to do for that if we're going to take $4.8 million from that. But this was something my predecessor did. This was not something I would have done because I look at the county as a whole. I look at every county and I look at the projects as bringing economic development in. Maybe there was a different criteria back then, but it's not that same criteria today. And thank God that we have an ability to take that 4.8 and move it over. And what I'm hearing today, there might be some temporary solutions, but the bottom line is we got a 50-year-old bridge out there on 309D in BARDIN, and we got a 50-year-old bridge on 310. Both of them, mark it down, provide economic benefit to this county. They do. One might be a shortcut, and one might be the only way. I get that. And that's why we're focusing in on County Road 309D today. But bridges bring value. And believe me, folks, when this outer beltway is delivered up on 17 at Gustafson Dairy, you want to move products and services as fast as you can to get out of this county and bring our goods and services in and bring our goods and services out. And and I tell you, when you look at the I-75 relief, you have to look at us in a big picture, regional, because I-75 relief wants some of that traffic off 75. Well, if they can come around through 310 and bring their products and services and stop at our restaurants and stop and buy gas and do the things that we want them to do, we should be applauding that. And so it's going to cost us a little money right now. We might have to float a loan to fix it. You and I will, when we get to 310, we'll talk about more in depth on that. But this is good for the county. These are good problems to have, and I love the conversation. Unfortunately, I'm not a contractor. I never built a bridge. Julianne accuses me of going to YouTube University a lot. I do. I question why can't we do things like this? I bother you to death with it. But I'm telling you, these are good problems that we finally can start doing. And you know what? It's not 3 years ago. It's not 5 years ago. We had the funding. If this conversation would have happened 5 years ago, it would be a loan that wasn't available. Well, we had some money in savings, don't get me wrong, but that wouldn't have been the conversation. So we're in a better place today to have this conversation, and I'm looking forward to what this board's going to do. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Commissioner
sorry.
Turner?
Yes. Where are we at on upping the maintenance on Sun Garden and Bellamy? Have we decided to up the maintenance yet, or are they still on normal rotation?
Right now, we're on normal rotation. There's a little bit of improvement being done in one particular area that has a lot of sand. We're hauling clay up there for that. But for the most part, the last time we rode it, it looked pretty good. The supervisor for that area is supposed to be riding it frequently and monitoring it. I will speak with the roads crew and stress that it needs to be maintained.
This commissioner would like to increase the rotation on that road for grading. I know it's not my area, but we're fixing to put a lot of traffic on that road, so. You know, I think that we should step up the maintenance on those two roads until this gets settled out.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
I agree with that, and I've never been down that road. But a similar situation happened in District 1 when they redid a bridge, and this was a much shorter span and did not have the truck traffic, the semi-traffic and stuff like that. And the road absolutely came apart within the first 30 days when that bridge was closed. Now, we're not talking about closing that bridge, but like Commissioner Turner said, we all agree that the traffic's gonna increase there. So we need to definitely do something because that road came apart and it was a tremendous mess.
If you need an extra road grader, I understand that all of them are down in District 1. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, you're not.
Would it be, I would like to continue pursuing, now I know that we've pursued it. I'll get there, that we pursued the one-lane access, light on each end, raise the weight. I know we pursued it. And the way that we pursued it was Hector Castro was the one that supposedly thought we could do that, but that's when he thought it was a scalding issue, not a scouring issue. When I talked to him, he didn't know if we could do that or not. Can we at least reach out one more time to either see if we can do that or not? Because we talked to DOT, who basically said that we'd have to talk to AIRS, and so I think we talked to AIRS, and then we talked to CEI, and everybody agreed that it wouldn't raise the weight. But it seems to me like, and of course, maybe I'm just eat up with common sense and don't have all them letters after my name, but it seems to me like if you got one lane of traffic at the time, that it would take more weight on that single lane than if you had two things of traffic. You had to be careful that 2 7-ton vehicles, you got to count on both of them being on the bridge at the same time. So if you only got one lane, maybe you could go to 14 tons. And I don't know what a school bus weighs or an ambulance, but if we could kind of just get it up a little bit somehow by one lane traffic in the bridge or by doing something, then it may get us to the point to where somebody's not going to die on a damn stretcher being wheeled across the bridge from one ambulance to the other. So please, could we continue seeing if we can't get that bridge open somehow for a higher weight capacity? If we please could.
Yes, even if it's minimal, I'll ask them, what can we possibly
Every
get?
little
If we
bit's
just go
got
to one
to
lane,
help.
it's gotta, I'm right there with you. You would think that, if it can handle 2 ways of traffic, if we reduce it to 1, certainly that would increase the load capability. So we'll ask
Or
the
at
question.
least just common sense would tell you could double the tonnage on the bridge, because you got to figure that any given time, they're gonna be going 2 different directions. So, how much could it cost to rent a couple of traffic lights and put on each end, and then, it'd be aggravating that everybody'd have to wait a minute or 2 at the light in BARDIN, but that'd be better than having no weight on the bridge. So I'm willing to move this forward today with you. I am, but I think there's 2 things we need to commit along with that, is that we'll continue looking for options that we can do to get that bridge open at a higher weight capacity, if not at full weight capacity. And the other thing is, I think this commission has to just absolutely, in my opinion, agree that we're gonna up the maintenance on Sun Garden and Bellamy Road to where the people of BARDIN with them trucks can get in and out of there without getting stuck. Now, we haven't had a rain event yet. When we have a rain event, Sun Garden Road's gonna go to hell. I'm just telling you. It's a bad road when we get a big rain event. So I think we need to try to just go ahead and figure right now that we're gonna up the maintenance on those 2 roads. And like I said, it ain't my district, but I would be astounded if Commissioner Rawls and Commissioner Goddard didn't concur on that.
I concur.
So, at least that'll get us moving in that direction as of this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Rawls?
To continue Commissioner Turner left off. On Sun Garden Road and on Bellamy Road both, I think we need to have a discussion about a minimal level of maintenance on it, because you said it's in decent shape, but I drove down it a month and a half ago, and it really was not in good shape at all. I wouldn't describe it as decent. We were able to take my wife's SUV through it, didn't have to put it in four-wheel drive, but it's an all-time four-wheel drive vehicle, and we did lose traction several times driving 45 miles an hour. The road's very steep in some areas, it's washed out in other areas. You've got no guardrails over two box culverts. I'm talking about Sun Garden going to 17, not going west, going east. And then the Bellamy Road section, you got trees, you got tight turns, and I agree with what Commissioner Pickens said. You're going to, I don't know how long that road's going to last day to day. I think it's going to have somebody out there continuously with the truck traffic and all the vehicle traffic.
And we met with Clay County and rode it with them as well. Again, 2/3 of that road they maintain, and we maintain 1/3 of it, but we will be able to collaborate with them. For me, I kind of envision, if need be, and it may sound excessive, if we got to park a grader out there, and have them hit it every week or every few days,
That's right.
we're just going to have to do it.
That's right.
Sir.
And Buddy said you could use the one that's up, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Harvey said we could have the one that's in his district.
Actually, we don't have any in District 4. We do it by a private contractor.
Oh,
Yes, so.
you don't have any road graders
We
at all in
have
District
one.
4? I thought I saw one. Wasn't there one in Florhome the other day I saw?
There is.
Well, obviously, he doesn't need one then. He can go
Yeah,
ahead and bring that one on up there.
Maybe that's why it was parked there by the fire station. But, and then the other thing is I guess what's really got me concerned, as a new guy, is the health index was discussed. The gentleman, from, the CSI said that when the health index gets below 85%, they have concerns. And in looking at the bridge report, that I handed out to everybody, we have either 14 or 16 bridges that have health indexes far below 85%. So where should we, if we're asking for a report every 4 months so we can keep up with this, what should we be focusing on?
Again, DOT inspects them annually, and you have to read into these reports in detail. Now, you could have something such as a geometry issue that will lower your index, and your structural integrity of the bridge is fine, okay? But, if you don't have an 8-foot shoulder, there's different things that can lower your rating. So you really have to get into the details to see why your rating is being lowered, and it's different for each bridge.
So,
But the ones that do have the structural issues, those are the ones we want to focus on, the ones that have the scouring and things of that nature. And those are the ones that the Corps of Engineers will also assist in funding. So my recommendation, or how I'd like to pursue this, is to prioritize off of the ones that are scour critical, that have the scouring issue.
Right.
Reach out to Corps of Engineers, here in the next month or two or whatever. Start that process and start pursuing funding and seeing what we can get done.
there's also some that say scour critical and some that say functionally obsolete. What is the definition of a functionally
I have to
obsolete
go
bridge?
back through all the definitions, but functionally obsolete means it's no longer necessary that the bridge even be in use, I believe.
So they still show up on our inventory. Are we maintaining them? Are they usable?
I'd have to look at the report, but functionally obsolete, from what I understand, is it's not needed. It's not a bridge that's per se in use.
Okay. Personally, I think at some point, I think we should take that bridge report, maybe break it down in 4 or 5 bridges at a time, and over a very short period of time, come in and go through all of them and have you explain to us what's going on with them so we can get a comfort level, at least I can get a comfort level of where we are and what we're doing.
And we could generate a project list, a proposed bridge project list to bring to the board and say, these are the ones that we find that we'd like to pursue funding for, and here's the specific issues with them. Rather than force you guys to read through, reports that are half-inch thick on them, and kind of.
What are we talking about, a 5-year range? In the next 5 years, we need to be addressing these bridges?
Yes.
Next
I would-
10
I
years,
would like
these
to- I'd like
bridges?
to look, at, at least, well, we'll prioritize them, all of them,
Right.
and just start knocking out what we can knock out in the next,
Because we have strategic planning coming up, and that, obviously, this is going to have to be part of it.
what's that now?
We have strategic planning coming up, and this is going to have to be part of it, that we are looking out in a 5-year window of what issues, if it's an issue today, it's not going to get better tomorrow. So,
The bridges
We just have to have a
definitely,
definition of-
definitely to be part of that strategic plan.
yeah, but we have to have a definition of knowing where we're going in that 5 years. Is it, if I say, let's just look at, I think there's a half dozen that say critically scoured. If you only focus on those half dozen, then 5 years from now, what about the other 8 that said that they had a health index of 47% for whatever reason? And that's what concerns me. There's some in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and I'm like, if 85% is bad, I can't imagine what a 45% looks like.
Again, you have to read into the details. Some of it could be like a guardrail issues to just a number of different things.
Okay, well, we'll definitely put that into strategic planning, and we know we have an issue, we know we need to address it, start addressing it. So, okay, Commissioner Turner?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to reiterate a comment that's been made around here quite a few times, is every single day, sitting in these chairs, there's a fire that's got to be put out. Every single day. Some of them's bigger than others, some of them's more important than others, some of them affect people more than others. But there's a fire every day. And I appreciate the fact that we're trying to look into the future and look and see this stuff coming at us. But if they identified 20 more bridges that had to be fixed next year, okay, we can't fix them. We don't have the money. And so it's like CEI in the room the other day, they pop up and say, oh, we'll be glad to go and inspect them for you all you want. Well, I'll bet they would, because they want us to write them a check for getting the same thing that DOT's giving us now for free. So, yeah, I bet they would. So I understand that you're trying to look at all the different issues, and I agree with it 100%. But we need to deal with some of these things as we go while we keep our eye on the overall picture, which is what you're trying to do, and I get it. But the next thing you know, it's gonna be a $200,000 roof on this building, or 3, or it's gonna be a different bridge, or there's gonna be a sinkhole in a road somewhere, or there's gonna be, I'm telling you, every single day, there's gonna be another issue. This just happens to be our fire right now, and it's not a match. That because it's affecting so many people's lives and livelihood, it's very important to us, and so we've moved it to the front burner. We're doing everything we can. We would have already pulled this trigger, except DOT warned us not to until we got this funding in place, or they wouldn't possibly not give us the funding, or it would have already been in place. So, yes, the government's frustratingly slow, and yes, sir, there's always gonna be another issue that comes up, whatever it is. So as much as I wouldn't run my own personal business like this in any way, shape, or form, but when it comes to the government, you could spend, if you had $100 million, you could spend it by the end of next year on projects that need doing around Putnam County. So you just got to take the worst ones and try to see the other ones coming, like you say, but take the worst ones and try to deal with them as you can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Harvey?
Mr. Chairman, you ready for, what's your pleasure? Do you want to do a motion on this? We already did a motion at the last meeting.
Well, that's for the funding, correct?
Right, we did
Yeah,
the
that's
motion.
what I
to
thought
move-
we
I'm
did.
moving the letter forward, I thought that's what he's asking for.
What I will need from the board is to say that it's acceptable to have the funding allocated proportional to the 3.4 figure. We're not going to do the temp rip wrap, we're going to do the full rehab, and that's what we'll pursue funding proportionally to.
But we do have to keep some semblance of, the engineer's going to have to work with DOT to keep something out there, because it can't just be a full replacement.
Yes, that's why it's called rehab.
There you go.
So
Thank you.
there will be a structural element that's in
All
there
right.
as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, the FDOT requires a letter. I'm not going to read all page 3. I think page 3 reads for itself, and I think that could be part of the motion as we go forward, that this is what we're trying to do. I do like the conversation of looking at some other temporary fixes with this other stuff that y'all talk about. But right now, I think it's important that we do these bullet points. Letter must be submitted by 10/30. The funding will be eligible for design, construction, CEI. That DOT will help us try to get a letter of reimbursement back off of that project on fiscal year 2023, which is July of '22. And that's when our reimbursement should be able to come back. And so I support the 3.4 million and looking at other options if we can to do some temporary repairs there. So that's the motion I'll make. How's that sound?
Second.
For Barden, that was Barden Bridge, yes.
I will second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we already got a second. We got a proper motion by Commissioner Harvey and proper second by Commissioner Rawls. So we'll open it up for discussion, and Commissioner Rawls had his up first. So Commissioner Rawls?
Okay, CEI, you've got plus or minus $400,000 in CEI costs between these two bridges. Is there not a way that we can hire somebody in-house to perform that? Because when I spoke to Ms. Miller, she said it could be, we could have somebody on staff that could do this. But $400,000 just seems awfully salty. And I know that it's a budget number and it can go up or down, but with the kind of work that we're looking at and the amount of work we're looking at in the time period, it just seems like it would behoove us to find an alternative solution to spending $400,000 for, we're talking about on-site engineering and testing, correct?
Well, it's engineering oversight to make sure that
Right,
they are
yeah.
executing the quality control plan, they're doing all the testing they need to be doing.
Densities and borings and concrete testing, all that, but
Yes.
that just seems like a really obscene number in my estimate. So I would, and I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I think that we should also look for a viable solution to CEI, especially when we have as much work as we're looking at now going forward.
Now, the issue with the CEI is it's required to be FDOT pre-qualified firms. That's where you get into this, and that's where you get into this figure of 210. Yeah, it'd be great if we could hire an engineering firm or have our own people in-house do it, but our in-house people would have to get the bridge CEI certification, which is an extensive
We
process.
can't hire somebody in-house for less than $400,000 a year to come in and, that has that qualification?
So what, oh, never, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I'm I'm just asking you to think about it. If it's not possible, it's not possible, but, you know, I'm one of those eternal optimists. I think anything's possible if you knew it long enough.
And
So-
again, you know, for our engineering department to get all the DOT certifications for
Not your
CEI would be
engineering, I'm
expensive.
saying if we hired somebody that has the credentials to work in-house, is that
Chairman,
possible?
I've
If the answer is
got
no,
to at
it's
least
no. I
make
got
a
it.
comment here,
Right.
and the comment would be, how the hell can you replace a whole firm of engineers with one in-house guy? That's a ridiculous
You
statement.
don't replace a firm. You have, basically, you hire the engineer, and then you hire a firm like Aegis or Universal or Geotech to come in, and they'll do the sampling and the borings and all that. But as far as the engineer himself that's on site, we could have that in-house from what I understand from DOT. If it's not possible, it's not possible.
Yeah, again, this CEI stuff, there's, you have on-site inspectors, you have engineers who review the pay apps, you know, engineers who review the submittals, the engineering, everything else. It's a lot more than just having one professional. There's multiple professionals involved with this.
We can't have an in-house
On-site.
engineer that reviews pay apps and submittals. I mean, it's,
We'd have to create our own, you know, CEI firm essentially, you know, get the DOT qualifications and everything else. I mean, you're
We
talking
got
multiple
an
staff.
engineer on staff, don't we?
We do, but for him to get the CEI.
I'm not saying that.
Yes, sir.
Don't go there, Mike. I'm just saying we got an engineer on staff already, but he's busy doing other
I
things
think
other
somebody
than
would
this
just focus on
project.
just this kind of stuff and save the extra money. But if it's not possible, it's not possible. You know.
All right, Commissioner Turner?
I'm gonna give my time to, Mr. Smith. He had raised his hand down there so at this time.
Been looking.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for record-keeping purposes, that was a fairly complicated motion, so we may need to circle back around after the meeting and make sure we get that exactly as stated for the minutes. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, now may I have my turn? That's exactly what I
Commissioner
was gonna
Turner?
try to do was get this cleaned up, because I was a little confused myself. And
I'm with
so,
you.
basically, under discussion, Mr. Chairman, it seems to me like we've already passed a motion that we're gonna ask the DOT to give us the haul-away money to do this other. We passed that last Tuesday.
Right.
So I think we've already done that portion of it, and I think the others are fine that Commissioner Harvey came up with, that we need to make sure that we do all them. But for the purpose of the motion, I would like to request if Commissioner Harvey could clean it up to the point to where something along the line of, that that the estimated cost for County Road 309D full rehab and County Road 310 crutch bench without temporary riprap at 309D and CR 310 has a budget figure of $5,097,584.25, of which DOT is possibly going to fund $4,839,529, or that and so as of this point, we're going to encumber $258,055.25 of our reserves towards this project. And if that's what everybody thinks,
Oh,
and
we're
then,
only discussing 309D right
No,
now.
we're only doing Barden.
I thought we were just doing one at a time.
My motion was only on Barden because
Okay,
we
I'm
wanted to
sorry.
separate those two.
well, if you wanna do Barden and try to just tell them how much money or whatever,
did. I put it in my-
evidently, everybody, including me, might be a little.
3,300,000,
I
yeah.
put
he
three
did.
point 4 million.
Yeah.
You had the three
That's
point
what
four
Mike-
million, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus any other temporary costs that, that I said for, the boring things that y'all were talking.
Sarah, do you have a motion?
Yeah, she's got
You
it.
got it?
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Maybe just make sure after the meeting, your
Got it.
intent was passed to her,
Yeah.
because I was confused.
Okay.
Sorry.
One last thing on this 309 Barden Road Bridge before we move to the 310 discussions. I just want to make the board aware, we are going to speak to DOT about possibly moving forward with the advertisement for the design RFQ, okay? Before our funding comes in. We're going to see if that's an option. That way, when the funding comes in, we've already done that process, of having something in the paper for 4 weeks, to try and buy us a little extra time. So, again, we'll check with DOT, so if you see that RFQ out there, that's what it is, okay?
Mr. Chairman,
We
you
won't
have,
move forward
Okay.
with it
All
without
right.
board action or anything else, of course.
All right, we have a motion on the floor, a proper motion, a proper second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Mr. Chairman, we take a break?
That part right there, right?
Okay, we're going to take a 3-minute break.
Full 3 minutes.
Full 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Going to preclude us from having a conversation.
And Mike?
Okay, gentlemen, moving on to County Road 310 Bridge. We have a couple of options here. Yes, sir?
Before we move away from that one, from the Barden
Barden.
deal, okay, during the break, it was brought to my attention that we still don't have an agreement with Clay County that we can go out and work on Bellamy Road, the portion of it that's on the Clay County side, or is that correct?
We have met with them, and we won't,
That wasn't my question.
no, sir.
We do not have an agreement. Have they agreed to either step up their maintenance or allow us to go ahead and do some grading on their land, or are we still just?
The last conversations we had with them is that they would work with us to keep it maintained, but as far as getting a permissive use to go grade what they're maintaining, we have not gotten there yet. I will follow up with the director today and make sure that their maintenance is up to par and keeping up with us, and if need be, we will increase maintenance. But the last conversations we had with them, they indicated that they would increase their maintenance as needed.
That is correct. That was,
Somebody needs to reach out to them, because it looks to me like this is where we're fixing to box up here.
yeah,
and it-
we'll get that issue straightened out sooner rather than later, but I will say Mike is correct that the Public Works Director, when he met with Mike and I out there, was that they would step up the maintenance as well. We would work out whether we needed to make sure that the citizens of both Putnam County and Clay County had a way in and way out.
And that can get to a subjective area. They may, determine to be reasonable maintenance and acceptable may not meet our needs, and so we need to have that conversation in a little more detail. At what point do we go beyond what they're doing, and how do we do that necessarily?
And a follow-up just on that is, part of the conversation was they were willing to even go through there and widen some parts of it that they actually had easement access to assist in some of the heavier truck traffic. So I'm sure they're working on their end, coming up with some ideas and plans as well. So we'll follow up with them. But it was a great meeting. I think they were very much willing to help us during the situation. So we'll Mike, get with them today if you could.
Yes, sir.
I just think it's important to understand somebody was stuck out there on that road the other day in sand or something, and it was probably on the area that belonged to Clay County. And so I don't know that they're gonna be as responsive to the citizens out there in Barden as what we're going to be. And so we need to reach out to them again and see if we can't have some kind of a handshake agreement, a written agreement, whatever kind of agreement, to where if that road gets impassable and Clay County doesn't wanna come fix it, that we be off our butt down there and fix that road without getting thrown in jail cause the grader police show up.
I'll, if it's okay with the chairman, I'll reach out to Mr. Wanamaker, the new county administrator down there today, and share the conversation we had here this morning and our willingness to get down there and assist him in every way we can to make this work.
Okay, before we move off of Troy, is it Troy, you want to come make a comment?
Sign police, but I was wrong.
So there is a greater police, I'll be darned.
It's probably in Clay County.
Okay, please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Troy Ellison, 1251 Barden Road. Until we figure out this Clay County, I gotta address you guys, this Clay County situation, hope you don't mind, because obviously I have a very fragile product, but Steve, our grader guy, is very nice and very willing to help, but I had to grab him the other day, and until you guys get this Clay County thing situated, I've got to use him if I have to, if that's okay with you.
For what?
You got the what?
To grade, to grade. Right now, my reefer trailer's already got stuck in a dump truck, had to pull him out. But I know it's against religion here, but,
I don't have any problem, Troy, but we can't give you authority to go take our grader.
no, I'm not gonna take it.
Grade over into Clay County. We can't give you that authority.
No, he's saying use the grader to pull out his truck if it gets stuck.
To pull out,
Can't
or
do
at
that
least
either.
try to trim down a little bit of the road until you guys get an approval.
That's not what he's,
We still can't give you that authority. We can't give you the authority to take our road grader into Clay County and even pull anybody out. If he does,
Well-
I'm glad he did for you, but we.
Well, it was a
can't
dump
give
truck
you
that did, but
authority. I don't believe
that
we
time.
have that authority, do we?
I would caution against it, Mr. Chairman, just until we get the, some sense of, understanding, maybe a letter of, intent and understanding with Clay County.
Troy, let's work real hard on the letter. I know
Okay.
you're upset, buddy. I get it,
no, I know.
but I understand. I would be too if I was in your situation, but you got to give us time to.
No, I understand, I'm just saying is, I know how things move, it's slow, and in the meantime, I have, as we speak right now, they're loading up right now as we speak.
Troy, could you show me the location on a map where it was exactly, and so I can determine if it was our?
Yeah, real easy, I could show you to you, but it's.
Yeah,
it's-
whenever you get a chance, just. I
yeah.
need to
It
know.
wa- it
'Cause if
was
it's
in
ours,
fro-
we need to go out there and get it corrected.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing is too, is while I'm up here, and I guess I got a voice for a few other people, but I know Mr. Turner was saying that, you guys are feverishly trying to maybe hard pack, County Line Road or Sun Garden Road. Now, my business is, I'm able to use Bellamy as far as I can go so far. I can't go north, and I can't use County Line Road. But that's just me. What about like Roger Bush and some of these other guys? Ernie Kramer's been down that road, Sun Garden Road, a few times. And I think Steve even graved a little bit of it. And 3 trucks went down that road in front of my reefer trailer and tore that baby up. So I know Mr. Turner was very polite to me and said that you guys are bringing hard pack or whatever, I don't know, millings, or I don't know what you guys are bringing in.
What Mike said earlier.
Okay.
Yes, clay for the areas that are sandy.
Oh, okay, I must have been talking to, out the back door when I was, but we have to figure that out, especially for like Roger and some of these other guys. They're not gonna use Bellamy. I'm the one that can use Bellamy because I have other farms sitting in Hampton and Hawthorne area. But I don't think other people are gonna use that road. I think it's gonna be, County Line Road. That's probably gonna have to be brought up with the other people out there. Other than that, I was just hoping maybe until you guys figure this out, but you're right. I guess I'll have to wait to hear from you guys to use that grader. Steve did help me out at the intersection, Mike. The intersection part was where he got stuck making that turn, so Steve did clean it up in that area for me. I guess, it gets tore up there. It's a lot of sugar sand. So far, he's been going through there, but Steve has to go that all the way to get to Bardin to do all the roads. He has to go down to 315 and come across Bellamy. So, and again, he can't touch, the blade can't touch Clay County road there, but I just want to let you know, he did that for me at that intersection. Just to try to get his turn, to get the trucks to turn in and out of there. So, other than that, you answered my question. I just have to wait from Clay County.
Okay.
All right, guys. Other than that, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Troy.
Sorry for bothering you guys.
Okay, Commissioner Turner?
Yes. Now that we've moved on to the 310 bridge, I'm assuming, can't we just skip through this whole presentation? We've already heard it 3 times, and just go right to the end and say, all right, we can't afford a new bridge on 310. We're gonna have to use the clutch bin option. You gave us an estimated cost of $1.67 million. Can't we just go on, unless somebody can come up with an alternate here that I'm not seeing, we can continue having a meeting just to have a meeting, or we can go on and get to the end, because we've already heard it 3 times.
I've got a question regarding that.
Okay. Commissioner Rawls?
Crutch bents, did we get any increase in the weight rating?
I can answer that.
Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During our meeting a minute ago, that was one of my questions, Mr. Commissioner Rawls, was when we were on that bridge out there, she said, Melissa Morgan told me that putting crutch vents under there would not raise the weight limit. But here's what she said today. The substructure is controlling the load capacity at this time. Load capacity would and should be determined by the engineer of record in the design of the crutch vents. The department does take the load capacity under construction. So during the break, Mike and I talked, and basically, if we need that road to, that bridge to hold a certain weight, then we tell the
Design the
engineer
crutch vents for
what we need. So that's where we're at, and Mike has agreed. So I think we're all, as far as I'm concerned, I'm with Commissioner Turner, ready to move forward, but we need to let the engineer know the weights, because that day we were on the bridge, Sheriff Deloach stopped some of those trucks, and those trucks were way overweight. And we need to at least build that bridge to hold that capacity. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So follow-up question to that. If we go with the crutch vent system that is designed with a higher rating, is that included in your 1.7 million?
Yes, the 1.6 figure, yes.
And what rating are you shooting for at 1.67?
All DOT traffic.
So we're gonna go 40 plus?
Mhm.
Okay,
Whatever the road holds, that'll hold.
but I'm just so we're clear, we're going
Yes,
for.
we're not going into this to come out of this with a reduced load rating, no.
No, I'm just saying that we're gonna go for the, was it MS, or MU, what was the highest classification they gave us when we were in the meeting a couple weeks ago with CSI?
I believe it was 72,000 pounds, I believe.
No, he said it was, I want to say he said it was 50 is what they shoot for nowadays, but
Okay.
there was the 2-letter
Maybe
designation.
with a safety factor, it may be up to that, but your traffic loads are 72,000
So
pounds.
just for clarification, I want for
Without
the
a
record
special
that we're,
permit,
with this
so.
1.67 million, we're going to end up with,
Mm-hmm.
and what is the longevity of that bridge?
Now, again, this is one of these issues here. You do have geometry issues associated with the bridge. When I say geometry issues, they're minor in nature. For now, the new standard, they want to see 8-foot shoulders and things of that nature, So there's some things here that you're not going to improve on. So you will still have a rating, that's somewhat diminished. It won't have 100% because you don't have 8-foot shoulders and minor things like that.
Is there no way to have the crutches wide enough to be able to put a deck on top of, move the guardrails out, and get the 8 feet?
I mean, we could explore that. We could possibly have the crutch bents built farther out, have additional lanes added or something of that nature. That's something that
just
could be
your-
reviewed in the
your
engineering
additional width.
process, but
My understanding from Ms. Morgan was that when we replace something like this, we're supposed to bring it to current standards. So can we at least look at that and see if it's not much more cost to have the crutches wider and make it a little wider, do that all at the same time? But the question was, what is longevity? Are we looking at 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30? Or can we get at least 10 years out of this?
yes,
system?
10 years.
Okay,
Well, I spoke with Dr. Ferris, who said you'd easily get 10 years
10
out
years,
of it.
okay. I'm good.
Commissioner Turner?
Mr. Chairman, we got to keep in mind here, these are engineering estimates. He could be half, or he could be double what it's gonna cost. I mean, I've seen it lately.
I just want to see if we can get as much bang for the buck and.
Buddy, I'm on board with you there, I am, but I also don't wanna spend more than $258,000 of our reserves towards these damn bridges.
All right.
So I wanna do the most bang for the buck for the least amount, for the least amount of bucks.
Right.
So we've got to get these 2 bridges up and running. we can't afford $2.5 million if we build a new bridge out at 310 too, so we've got to do the next best thing, which is get the thing open to full weight traffic as soon as possible.
Okay. Administrator Suggs?
Yes, sir, I may have missed it, and I apologize if I did. I don't need to go ahead and beat a dead horse, but Commissioner Rawls's last comments about weight limits, once we do the crutch bent system, just for my edification, would you clarify what it was that you were requesting that we ensure that we get out of that process?
So, my understanding is we're gonna try to bring this up to current, load standards. And in meeting with CSI, from recollection, it was 50 ton, was what they designed for nowadays, and 28 feet wide, I believe. So, my concern is that we meet that so we can bring the big semis full of, trees and, garbage trucks and not have to worry about that heavy traffic. And then while we're at it, if it's possible to go 4 feet wider on both sides so that the crutches are just longer. Obviously, they'll have to be taller, but we're not worried about what's hanging below the water. And then add new decking that would widen it. So we've just killed two birds with one stone. That is a very tight bridge. And I wouldn't want to be a semi driver facing oncoming traffic with another semi, because that would have to be pretty uncomfortable. But if that's at all possible, otherwise, get it as high as we can get it. And
I absolutely don't disagree with anything Commissioner Ross just said. My only concern is that if we do a crutch bent system out there, I don't know if the DOT is going to raise it above what the current standards are out there, which is, I believe, 15 ton.
DOT's made it very clear, they do not set the weight limit. It's the engineer that designs it. And as recently as yesterday, I had a conversation with her, and we were going over their design standards. She said, look, we have a manual, and she sent me a link to it, and I went through it. So the engineers subscribe to a piece of software. They put in the design parameters, and it comes out with the weight rating, and they give this to DOT. They approve it. They approve it based on their standards. So it's really, if we tell the engineer the crutch bent system will be designed to withstand 50 ton, then DOT gives it 50 ton. If we tell them 40, we'll get 40, 30, whatever. And it might be dollar driven. We may only get it to 30 or 40, but.
Well, that was my concern. I just want to make sure that Mike has the right direction here, because I don't want him to go in with a $1.6 million price tag to bring it back to the current standard and expect the weight limits to go up. We have to have that conversation going in. So I just want to make sure we're clear
we're
with
going to
that.
spend this 1.6 million, we're getting the weight up, we're not going to maintain the status quo. Because right now, the status quo is not going to get it done, and that would just be throwing away $1.6 million.
So the comment then would be or the concern would be, Mr. Nimitz, is the 1.6 million, is it going to
Yes, it's
address the
gonna-
crutch bents as it is now, or will it get us a higher weight rating?
Give a higher weight rating to what we
Okay,
currently
just
have.
wanna make sure.
Basically, the reduced weight rate, the reduced load rating that we currently have will go away. That's the intent of the crutch bed.
There you go.
All right, hang on just a second. Commissioner Turner?
I'd like to make a comment. I don't believe there's anything in this world can't be done if we're willing to write a check big enough. If we start using wider crutch bents and we start widening the bridge, pouring a new deck, doing all that, we just blew the hell out of that $1.7 million budget, and we put it back up around close enough that we ought to just tear it down and build another one.
No, what he just said was, in this 1.6, he's bringing the weight rating up. It's in here.
From where it is now to where it was before they not condemned it, before they dropped the weight
Dropped the
rating
weight.
on the bridge. They're not bringing it up to the new standard of a new bridge that's being built.
What, Mike, didn't you say you're bringing it up to the 50? In this 1.6?
It'll be up to what it was before they reduced it, which would be all DOT traffic.
They won't bring it up to the current 2020 standard, which is a higher weight gain overall. They're
What
gonna
is-
bring it up to what it was before.
What is the restriction on all
lasted
DOT
50
traffic?
years.
What is the restriction on all DOT traffic then?
I don't know.
72,000 pounds is my understanding.
36 ton.
I'm not a DOT
Yeah.
expert.
36 ton, okay. Well, and as far as the crutches go, they can be cantilevered beyond the vents.
I understand
So
all that, but it all costs extra, Jeff, that's my point. I'd like to try to,
I'm saying if we can get it, let's spend our money as wisely as possible, that's all. If we can spend a little more and get a lot more, if not, I'm happy with bringing it up to all DOT traffic if that'll qualify for whatever traffic we have coming out of the I-75, because we are going to be getting a lot of traffic from 75.
All right.
I
Okay.
think I have the floor, I'm not sure.
Yep.
And so I'd like to go ahead and offer a motion that on County Road 10 that we, go toward the crutch bench system for a estimated engineer's cost of $1.67 million.
Okay, we got a proper motion on the floor.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a proper second by Commissioner Rawls.
Mr.
Okay, for
Chairman?
discussion, Commissioner Harvey?
Yeah, following the same rules that apply to, that we did with the Holloway Road moving over, it'll be under that same contract and within the same letter, asking for the same funding reimbursement back. Is that right, Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sarah, you got that? Okay. All right, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Anything else, Mike?
We're going to need you after the meeting to sign the letter here.
Oh, you already have the letter written.
No, it's not written. We're going to put it together here.
I'm-
and just
Voted on
me
the
alone.
letter last week.
I know, but it's got these numbers in it.
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
Preemptive. You brought 10 versions of it.
Exactly. Okay, we'll move down to item 3, public comment. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens an opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. It's not reasonable to expect the board will engage in debate or deliberation on matters on which the board receiver no prior information on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We prefer that you fill out a public comment card, which are available at the entrance and exit of the building, and give them to Sarah Oliver to my left, to your right. Are there any individuals wishing to come and speak on any items that we've discussed or that aren't on the agenda? Okay, all right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion. We'll move down to County Administrator Suggs. I believe he has a couple of items that we need to address.
Yes, sir. First one is, apologize for it not being advertised on the agenda. It was one of those time-sensitive things that came up. It pertains to the jail laundry project. We got our bids in. I believe our procurement director, Ms. Julianne Young, has some comments that she would like to address with the commission this morning and get some feedback and some direction on moving forward. Julianne?
Good afternoon. As you will or may remember, we had a bid for the jail laundry expansion. It was exclusive of equipment. The estimated budget from the engineer's estimate of probable cost for the base bid was $181,000. The bids came in this week, and the base bid from the only contractor who bid was at $365,000. Clearly, this is far beyond our budgeted
Only by 100%.
amount. We have had very limited discussions based on what we're allowed to do with the contractor to date. And we did learn that they erroneously included the cost of equipment in that $365,000 number, which does take their base bid down to $274,000. However, this is still 52% higher than what we budgeted for. And it does not include any of the alternates, some of which are more important than others, like the pressure reducing valve. What General Services or Procurement is asking this board to do is to waive the current procurement ordinance and allow us to use the prescribed value engineering process for which you've already approved, and allow us to go down that process and meet with the contractor to understand if we can bring this project into budget, and or understand what led to the great difference in what we expected and what we got from budgeted numbers.
Okay, Commissioner Rawls?
It sounds like the whole thing is convoluted. Now we're trying to take something apart with only one respondent. So who came up with the proposed budget?
The engineer's estimate of probable cost played into a portion of the proposed budget. The other portions of the budget were created via the estimates that we got on the equipment needed to install it. So those two components put together. are-
Layman's terms, who came up with was it was a contractor that we hired to do design work or
The
in-house?
architect and engineer essentially drove the variable portion of the budget.
And who was this architect and engineer?
Mr. Taylor.
Okay, in my personal experience, this is not unusual to his firm. The same thing has happened on multiple jobs with him. I think that, in one experience that I had with the EOC warehouse, and the other one was with the BARDIN Fire Department, or I'm sorry, the BOCC Fire Department. They were both underestimated by more than 50%. And I think this is where the county really needs to have somebody in-house that can take a look at this, because once the numbers hit the street, contractors are savvy enough to find out what the budget is. That's the reason why you may have had no responses. As they said, you got a $200,000 or less budget and a $300,000 project, we're not looking at it at all, and you don't get responses. It's very unusual that contractors don't want to belly up to the bar and bid on work, but if they know that there's not going to be a lot of money in it, it's not worth their risking their time and wasting it, because you're fighting over just tiny amounts of money. So, my recommendation would be to put this back out on the street as a design-build project, and invite more comers that way. But to just bring one contract to the table at this point and try to negotiate the price down, it's just, we're strapped. I mean, it's like we're literally going to be held hostage by one designer and one contractor. And, I would doubt that contractor doesn't know what our budget is. And they probably know now that they're the only respondent.
Well, just to kind of bring a little bit of clarity to what you're saying, the theory behind our value engineering process is such that at the end of the day, we're going to always go back to one contractor and one designer or engineer. To speak to the selection of the architect engineer, sure, we can.
But now we're
evaluate
paying
some-
somebody to do what we just paid to have done. We paid somebody to engineer this
I
and
understand.
get it
So-
closed, but 100%, missing the bullseye by 100% or 50% is missing by a lot.
I completely agree with you. If we engage now in design build, we're gonna pay another architect and.
Design, build, you put on the street, they come with their own architect. We don't have to pay anything to get to look at their numbers. Costs us nothing except your time in getting it advertised. They bring in the architect, the engineer, everything.
Okay. All right, hang on just a second. All right, Commissioner Rawls, we'll let
I'm-
Commissioner
I'm-
Harvey
I'll shut
go,
up.
and then we'll go to Commissioner Turner. Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of agree with parts of what Commissioner Rawls has said, but I do want to be able to allow you, Julianne, to go back out and negotiate this price down. And if you feel like at that point that it can't happen, then bring it back before us, and then I think we should go back out for bid and do something different. So that's my statement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Turner?
My statement's along the same lines as Commissioner Harvey's is. I think we do need to go with the new ordinance that we've all talked about and use that portion of it and use this for a test case. Worst case scenario, we can't get where we need to get, and we have to throw all the bids out and redesign. The only thing that I would hope is that when we're paying our percentage to the architect, that we pay him, if we have to throw his throw his design out because he over-designed it. I would certainly hope that we paid him on his budgeted estimate and not on what the contractor's price was. Because it's a big difference in what we owe for design fees.
We agreed on this project to a flat fee, so yes, sir, we won't pay any more than what we have today.
Well, I think that we've got to seriously reconsider how we're doing things around here. I don't agree with design build like Commissioner Rawls does, because in my estimation, that ends up costing you more money in a lot of instances, because a lot of firms aren't set up to do design build, and so you might get somebody who would build it less that won't even get to bid the job because there's no design there. But I also think that the way that we're doing it at the present time, where we just go pick an architect, to hell with how much it costs, doesn't matter. We pick a person, and then once they're in, they just get to discharge whatever they want to. I understand there's some statute about that or whatever. We got to figure out another way to do it, meet statute and do it where we're not being held hostage by design professionals. I'll give you a case in point. The engineer that we have a continuing services contract with, when this deal started on this bridge, their engineer fee was 27%. 27%. So, a few of the commissioners raised some grave concern about those percentages, and all of a sudden they're down around 8 to 10. I mean, that's what happened. You can sugarcoat it any way you want, but that's what happened. That fee went from around 27% to 8 to 10% because it was being questioned. So we've got to figure out a way that we can build that in to our deal to where we're not being taken advantage of, which we are right now. If we can't because it's statute, so be it. But I think we can find a way to make this whole process just a little bit fairer. Now, excuse me for getting on a tangent. Yes, I'm with you. I think we should go and negotiate, just what you said, waive the old purchasing ordinance for the new one that hadn't been voted on yet, but that portion of it has been voted on.
Yeah, right.
So yes, we just haven't passed it into ordinance. So yes, I think you should be able to go and negotiate with the people and see where it takes you. If it doesn't take you anywhere, we're not out anything. Because otherwise, my next question is gonna be, how much it costs to just have somebody come in and do your laundry? I mean, really? I mean, we're fixing to spend $300,000 or something, or $400,000 on a laundry. It costs more than $50,000 a year. You can do it 8 years, and that's not including the soap, the water, the electricity, or any of that stuff. So,
Right. That's a great question. That is something that we researched. We found one firm out of Jacksonville that would do this, that could handle this capacity of laundry. They will not transport it, so we'll have to transport to and from Jacksonville on the laundry. And it was roughly, the estimates they gave us based on our inmate population and change out was about $35,000 a year to do that laundry. So to back up and just address what Mrs. Young said, you know, when we spoke with the engineers or the architect on this, he, you know, asked us where we thought this should go and what direction, what walls do we want to adjust. And, you know, we did the best that we could as far as the sheriff's office thought how we could make it run efficiently. However, I think we're certainly open to any suggestions, and I think that this process that Mrs. Young is describing, we may be able to make significant changes in the project to significantly reduce the prices and still make it an operational laundry for the sheriff's office.
Mr. Chairman, why wouldn't you just hire the stuff out? I mean, there's got to be somebody out there for a certain amount of money.
It is. That's the amount that.
Stuff to Jacksonville back and forth for you.
That's the amount that is roughly $35,000 a year was the estimate they gave us with no transportation.
I'll bet your soap costs that much. Soap, the city's water's expensive.
And
Add that to the
Right.
$50,000 a year projected cost that this thing is gonna be. So I mean, you're up around probably $80,000 to do it in-house, or you could just get somebody to do it for you and not have to worry about all that and just dress up your equipment for emergency situations that keep what you have now.
I think that it would take a lot of research into those exact costs, in that the overtime for the transport of the laundry every day. That's trip back and forth to Jacksonville daily, or,
Overtime.
well, they won't transport the laundry. The sheriff's office will have to, so I don't have deputies that can,
Subcontractor that hauls stuff and get him to haul your laundry back and forth.
okay, so
for
that
you.
price isn't
It's a
included.
full-time job for somebody.
Okay, so that price isn't included, and the figure that I gave you would be the cost of the transport. That's just to do the laundry, so, okay. It's certainly something that I can get you some better numbers on if that's the direction that you want to look at.
I'm not trying to micromanage the
I
sheriff's
understand.
department, that's not my intent whatsoever.
Yes, sir.
But I think it's something that maybe needs to be looked at, but especially if we can't get down under this, because I don't know if you're gonna get me to vote to give you another $150,000, $200,000 where you can wash more clothes than you can now. I mean, I'm just getting there.
I do understand. I think that at least our preference would be, and then we'll take whatever direction that you give us on it, but our preference would be to let us see if we can bring this down and get to something that's out on our target where we originally were, or something that is livable. But I glass half full as well. I seem to think that we can make some significant changes to this, even if it gets down to the point where we end up just, getting the foundation strong enough to where we can put the new equipment in it, and maybe have to live with the size that we have. But we can certainly look at that. It is the volume of the laundry. It is the amount of time that we have to wash the laundry. And I get it. It sounds meaningless, and it does to me too, about having to wash this laundry. But then we get into things. The reason there's only one contractor to do it is because of the disease infection risk that they have to take, and the sanitation that has to be done to this laundry, and it's part of the disease control inside the jail, so that we can keep our medical costs down. But first thing I thought about was
to micromanage y'all sheriff's department. It wasn't, but I think that needed to be said. They're allowed to sit in with the negotiation, correct? The principles of it.
The end user is required.
Yes. We will designate one person to sit on that, and I do appreciate your comments, and it certainly would be my benefit, or would be my first choice, is to not do this laundry in-house at all, because it takes deputy sheriffs to do that, to oversee the inmate labor that does the laundry inside. So I could take a deeper look at that at the same time that we're moving forward with this process, and maybe work both of those at the same time and decide which one's better for the county as a whole at the end of it. Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Rawls?
The Design Build Institute of America is a real group. Design Build has done a lot. I would respectfully disagree with any assertion that design build actually could cost more money, because normally it costs less money. For something like this, you might have somebody go in and core drill the foundation of the slab that's failing and put that information out there. And then you say, we need to have this many washing machines, this many dryers in this area. You give very basic parameters. The design build team comes back with the engineering and all relevant documentation. Everything that I've read requires design professionals, does not require architects, requires design professionals. Where some things get a little bit confused is, in this case, you don't need an architect, but you would have to have a design professional in the form of an engineer. If you were building something at the fairgrounds where you're going to have to define life safety issues, you would have to have an architect review for life safety. But again, that's the responsibility of whoever comes in as a design build team. So design build doesn't cost more, it costs less, because once they bite off that contract, short of digging up an unforeseen condition, in the case of the jail where they cut through the concrete and they dig it up and find subsurface conditions that weren't reported during or before the design build was put out, they're responsible for the design and the build, and they're responsible for defects that come along with it, and they're responsible for ownership and warranty and latent defects going out 10 years. So that I'm only saying that to educate people, because my company has done a lot of design build, and we know the inherent risk with it, and we take them anyways, because we do a good job at it, and we can mitigate the risk because we're in the design process at the build. You don't give it to an architect who designs it and then gives it to an engineer who engineers it, and then give it to somebody to bid it, and they go, wow, I could have done a lot cheaper if it had been designed this way, but here, I'll just go ahead and put these numbers on paper. You eliminate all that up front. But in your case, and I'm going from memory when you and Sheriff DeLoach went through the jail with me, the issue was a couple things. Number one, you need to increase your capacity by adding a third washer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you wanted to cut a hole in the wall. I can't remember why.
Well, the several issues are facing us. The most critical is the current equipment in there is far beyond its lifespan.
Right.
It's very expensive equipment, and no vendor will warranty the new equipment because the foundation is cracked under it and the drainage is insufficient.
Okay.
So it's no sense in even trying to buy equipment. You're talking $30,000 washers that the warranty will end the day they set it in our jail.
Got it.
So that issue is going on. And then, yes, to add the additional washing machine, which will make us not run the laundry around the clock, which is requiring additional deputy sheriff oversight, which will, in the end of the day, bring costs down, will require some additional space. But certainly, I think there may be multiple options on how to obtain that additional space. Perhaps we went about it wrong with our ideas on how to obtain it, and we'll entertain any suggestions we can get.
So without having core samples of what you have, from memory, the issue was the concrete is degraded because the chemicals that you guys use in the washing process, correct?
It's a vicious circle, and so we're dealing with that somewhat, but also because the current washers, both of them, the bearings are wearing in those, they're getting increased vibration.
Okay.
They're not repairable, they're beyond their service life, so the only option to stop the additional vibration is the new washers, which nobody will put in because the slab isn't
So you
sufficient.
cut the concrete, remove it, put in more heavier foundations. That's fairly simple work in the real world. And then you get your new washing machines. Are you guys doing owner direct purchase? Or is it?
Well, there's some options were discussed there, yes.
Okay.
There is no equipment that is intended to be part of the bid. That is a separate, we already have them on a consortium contract and have a negotiated price for the equipment.
Yes.
I mean, it's a very, very, very small scale project. When I saw it, I thought this is gonna be simple, you know, but.
So perhaps, like I said, it still could be, and perhaps we look at all options, if we look at just reinforcing the foundation and improving the drainage to the point where we don't get any larger at this point. We will look at all of those, any options that we can. and kind of-
Yeah,
But
honestly,
I do think where we are is where we're gonna
Yeah,
we're gonna vote, or we're gonna waive a support or let Judy Ann to move forward with the particular bidder. And if you can't work anything out, then we're throwing everything back on the table, and you're gonna look at
Correct.
getting it farmed out, right?
At the same time that process is going on, I'll assign our Director of Corrections to handle that process, and I'll handle the other process of getting you firm, hard numbers on what we think we'd look at annually on contracting out.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're gonna
Excuse me,
need.
excuse me,
Okay.
Commissioner Goddard.
Colonel, before you leave, I have, how many days you looking at transporting it if you were to contract it into Jacksonville?
That's something I can't give you a hard number on. I think it will likely
Daily?
be multiple times a week
Okay,
because
so you're possibly three times a week.
that may be the case. I would just have to look at that. There's a lot of unknowns there. We don't change their sheets and wash them every day, but if they laid their head on them for 30 seconds, those sheets have to be changed and washed before it goes
Okay,
to
but
the
it wouldn't
next
be a
inmate. So,
day-to-day, that's what I'm
yeah,
kind of looking at.
Well, I can't guarantee you that. It would be at least multiple times
That's-
a week.
yeah.
It's just something I would have to look on based on what their turnaround is to get it back to us and that type of
Okay,
stuff.
and how many officers, when you are doing it in-house, how many officers are you tying up?
One deputy
Per
sheriff
shift?
oversees the inmates.
Is that
It's
just?
24 hours a day right now to keep
Okay,
up
well,
with
you
it.
wouldn't have an officer in there 24, so would you have 3 officers for that day, or?
It would be two different because they're on 12-hour shifts. So we'd have one officer
okay.
per shift. Right now is overseeing laundry. With the additional of a machine, that would back down to 8 hours a day. That deputy sheriff would be freed up for the remainder of the day.
Okay, but now these are, at present, we're running daily?
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, yes,
Okay.
sir.
So what we would do is we would eliminate that, we would be transporting it, and basically it'd just be, take the dirty laundry up, bring clean laundry back. Mike,
Mike,
my
ahead.
other question, if you were to do this, and you were to subcontract this out, and you had a subcontractor
Right.
that carried your laundry and everything else, that also releases 2 officers to do the things that they need to do. And you would still have the ability to use the existing laundry on a very limited basis.
You could use it as long as they continue to work, correct?
Okay. And just, that's what I had there.
Sure.
On your total price of $365, that included all new equipment, am I not? That includes the contract, the concrete work that had to be done, so basically, the $365 is exactly what they need to do, what they have to do in-house.
The 365 does not include either alternate. One of those alternates is a pressure reducing valve. I'm not sure how much of an alternate that truly is. So it doesn't include everything. However, it did include the equipment, and they did remove the equipment as well as the percent of the bond that was attached to the equipment, which brought us down, their base bid down to $274,851. However, still significantly over budget by $93,000.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right, Commissioner Turner?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, looks to me like, unless, I'm misreading something here, we're gonna have to give her a motion to set aside the current purchasing ordinance and install the portion of the purchasing ordinance that pertains to this of value engineering that we've already voted on but haven't finished passing yet. Is that correct?
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We've got a proper motion by Commissioner Turner. Got a
Second.
second by Commissioner Harvey. All right, we have any further discussion? Commissioner Harvey, you had your line?
I was going to make the motion. I was writing it down.
Okay, we've got a proper motion on the floor and a proper second.
I got one question.
Okay, Commissioner Rawls?
Julianne, you said it doesn't include the PRZ. Has anybody looked at putting a PRZ at the head of the property where the backflow preventer is for the entire
They've done that.
facility?
That's been done. This is an additional one that's isolated to this room only.
Okay, so we're talking about a very small PRZ then?
$2,500.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, all in favor, okay, by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Administrator Suggs?
Yes, sir. Another item is discussion I'd like to have this morning, and Quinn, if you join me up here, please. Has to do with our fire EMS folks. As you know, we've been working very diligently trying to improve some staffing levels and some working conditions for our folks. And met with Mr. Reynolds as well as Chief Romay on this idea a few days ago. Had some further discussions on it. I met with one of the captains of fire rescue yesterday, and I have 2 more meetings scheduled this week. But Quinn, if you would, what we'd like to do is just share an idea here this morning of what we would like to do to show some incentive, as well as hopefully show our staff the value that they bring to us as Putnam County administrators and commissioners and our citizens, but move forward with an idea to have discussions with the union following today's meeting. So I'm going to let Quinn, if you don't mind, go ahead and go through the process of what we were discussing.
Thank you, Mr. Suggs. Just to call your attention, we've had discussions at workshops, we've had discussions during the budget hearings and so forth about the various issues. We had the volunteers come in a workshop or 2 ago and talked about their dilemma, their lack of ability to keep up with the call volumes, and also the lack of volunteerism as we go. Which all of that culminates into another issue that we've talked about, is the paramedic and EMS shortage nationwide. It's not just us that are having difficulties attracting new employees. It's a nationwide issue, but it's something we're all facing in the industry, and it's something that we all are trying to work on, no matter which county you go with. Some other counties pay more, some other counties have different incentives. So we're trying to think outside the box. As Mr. Suggs said, Matt and I and Mr. Suggs, Mr. Pickens was in a meeting the other day. We're trying to come up with a number of different issues that we can incentivize, A, helping to fill the void, and then B, attract new employees. So then that's what I want to bring to you today, is a couple of those. The first one being, right now we're having to mandatory several positions, up to 5 or 6 per shift, just to fill the ambulances we have. And to put that into perspective, we've got 9 budgeted ambulances. Right now, we only have 8 on the road. One of them I can't fill because I don't have staff to fill it. If we don't come up with a solution pretty quick, we're gonna have to start browning out another ambulance, meaning if I don't have somebody to put on it, we're gonna have to shut it down for a period of time, which we've had to do. And one of those things that we're working on and the problems that we're having is mandatory. We're running our people to death. Having to mandatory the existing folks, being 11 paramedics short, plus some other positions, that's compounded the issue and creates open spots on a daily basis. So what we're proposing today, and I've talked to Matt about it, and like I said, Mr. Suggs, is to pay double time
for anybody that signs up to voluntary work overtime to fill these slots. In doing that, I hope it incentivizes some to step up and help fill that. But along the way, we also have a number of other things that we're working on to incentivize people to go out and help recruit others to come, new employees, also to seek out and try to figure out what those other incentives are. We've got a number of things in the toolkit, if you will, that we're looking at. But the one we want to talk about today is trying to change and offer double time.
Let me, if I can piggyback just a little bit, Mr. Chairman, what's happening now is when we mandatory someone, they automatically get 1.5 times their salary for being mandatory. But what we're trying to do is put a program together that will allow those folks to volunteer to pick up an additional shift and pay them double time instead of the normal 1.5 times their rate, which will hopefully give those folks that are continuously being mandatory an opportunity to get some sense of normalcy back in their life, give them some quality of life, and give them a chance to, for lack of a better word, rest. And until we fix this issue, I think it's critical that we start looking at some of these things outside the box for our staffing levels. We are looking at other opportunities to incentivize this area of need so we can attract folks here. We have onboarded, I think, 4 new today or yesterday, I think it was. So we're doing those things, and it is a national shortage. But we need to take care of those that are supporting us, and that's our folks that we currently have on staff. So I've talked to Matt Reynolds. The reason why Matt was brought into this is Matt's the numbers man. This was not going to, it sounds like we're giving double time as opposed to time and a half. It's going to be a cost issue. Well, it's not, because of the amount of positions that we're down. With the attrition being what it is, we're not going to catch up in the budget this year, even if we fill all 14 spots or 11 spots that we currently have open. And as positions are filled, then those cost numbers associated with the volunteer program for overtime will certainly decrease. So it was just, we wanted to bring this to you so we could hopefully get support from the commission so we can work with the union, then we can bring it back at a future date to get approval. It's just, we need our staff to understand that we're looking at this holistically and not just in little bits and pieces. We want to take care of the staff that are taking care of us.
Okay, all right. Can we have questions
Sir?
from the commissioners? Got a few
Sure.
questions? Okay, we'll start.
One thing I was just going to add to, if I might, is we've looked at the budget. I know a number of the conversations is you've got to try to do it within your budget, and I think we've done that with, like Mr. Suggs said, the open slots and the salary line items that are there. But I've also offered to take my salary and raise and put towards this if it comes down to it at the end of the day. It's such a critical issue. We've got to fix this, and we've got to fix it going forward. We can't keep doing what we're doing.
Okay. Commissioner Rawls?
All right, so I've been taking notes and writing questions. I'm just going to kind of go down, see how my mind works here. So where are we in the collective bargaining process? So are we currently under a contract, or are we going to be opening up the entire contract? Right now, what year are we in?
Currently, we are negotiating with the union. They
Okay.
opened up a number of articles, and we've got a meeting on Monday, I believe.
So we're already in
in
the
that
collective bargaining process? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Last year, when I first came on, you were discussing entering into an agreement with the hospital for non-emergency transport. Did that ever happen?
No,
Okay.
not yet.
And is that off the table at this point, I would assume?
We're still working on transfers, but that's a conversation we're having with Mr. Suggs and them on what our
So-
future is there.
If you focus on doing non-emergency transports, and I understand there's money involved in that, but how does that help you when you're already overworking your people, and now you're going to put more of a demand on them?
Well, we're already been doing that for years, so it's not something new, but it is with the way the hospital is working. There's many, many more transfers going in, and that's why we're having the conversation on what the future of that may or may not
I mean,
be.
is there a possibility of pulling away from the table from there, bringing in outside privateers long enough to,
That's under discussion.
Okay.
Yes.
okay. All right, so I have a very difficult time trying to wrap my head around Putnam County Fire and EMS. It's a fractured group. I understand there's an MSTU for fire, and then you've got EMS. The fire folks are paid under the Garcia ruling, correct?
Correct,
And then the EMS is paid under a basic 40-hour week.
correct,
So, but they're working 24 and 48, correct?
correct.
So they have a 72-hour work week, a 48 and a 48. They have 32 hours of overtime 1 week, 8 hours and 8 hours. And
For the EMS folks,
for
yes.
the EMS folks, okay. So how is it possible that if you have an EMT that rides on a fire truck that says, hey, I'll volunteer for overtime to ride on an ambulance to go from Garcia to Standard? So what I would like to see us do, because if we can do this, I think it would help the situation a lot, is if we could get everybody under Garcia. So Garcia ruling says, if you're a firefighter, you work Monday, Wednesday, Friday 1 week, Tuesday, Thursday the following week, and then Wednesday, Saturday. That means you're working 72, 48, 48, but it averages to 56, right? 56 hours a week. So you don't get overtime until you hit your 57th hour. So you can go from getting off of a fire truck where you're getting paid under that Garcia ruling to going to an ambulance and back and forth, and people can rotate around. And back when Quinn and I were working in the fire department, we worked some days. We worked 1 month in Satsuma, 1 month in Interlaken, 1 month in Palatka on rescue. Then you would do a month on fire only, and you could just kind of move around, and there was no difference in your pay or the way you were being paid. I cannot even begin, as a business owner and a firefighter in the past, I can't even begin to understand how you guys even keep up with who's what, doing how, and how they're getting paid. So I would propose that if we're going to have these conversations and negotiations, that part of it include looking at getting everybody to Garcia, and also a step and grade system, and let the fire rescue be the steps in the right direction to bring in step and grade for all of our county employees. But a step and grade pay system says you come in at you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever going up, and then you have A through whatever going over, and your A through whatever is your pay raises as you go across. So to move up in salary, you would have to go up this way, but every year that you're in there, you move over and you get a cost of living adjustment or an automatic pay raise. And then, and when I worked for Palatka, I think it was 7 years. Once you hit 7 years, you were capped. If you didn't promote yourself to engineer, if you didn't go get some credentials to make yourself promotable or test for something, you pretty much locked yourself out. You were at the end of your career as far as pay goes. But the positions we're talking about are strictly paramedics, or are you short EMTs right now?
Right now, we're short EMTs on the fire truck. We've got 2, but we've got 2 that started yesterday, and we've got some more
Is
coming.
that because they're under Garcia and they're,
Yep.
so yeah, I can see right now, we're shooting ourselves in the foot with the way we're paying folks. There's no incentive to be an EMT on the fire truck, because the guy that's doing the exact same job can pull overtime at 40 hours a week when somebody else has got to do the same thing. And
Actually, there's a disparity in pay, and that's something I don't,
between EMT and EMT?
yes,
Really?
yes.
Why?
It's a bigger conversation I think you want to have today.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
I think it is. So
It's
I've
a-
got a couple other commissioners want to ask some questions. Are you,
Okay, I'm sorry.
okay, Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You sure I was next?
No, I was next. I saw your finger.
His was vibrating. Yours is spinning around in a circle.
I got an email on this the other day, this situation, and my response was, as much as we want to, we're trying to recruit people and bring people to Putnam County, it's a robust economy. And every place that you go to, every community's got signs out looking for workers. We got jobs fixing to come open in Putnam County where solar farm's going to need a couple hundred people. Where are we going to get them at? I had an employer call me out of Gainesville looking for 125 employees. I'm like, we don't have them. We can't find them ourselves. So, I don't want to despair the part that it's important, but I do have some questions here. Is there a way that, and please paramedics back there, forgive me, I'm just asking this question, not, can we augment them with any other professionals in the medical field until we can solve this problem? And I realize the step pay upward, that's a union issue that they need to deal with. That's not, they need to be negotiating that upward and back and horizontal. But can we use other medical professionals in the meantime to fill some of those gaps?
No, we're required by law to have a paramedic and an EMT on every ALS ambulance. And when you have a shortage of, recruits, that's where we're at. And one thing that I think we need to look at, and we've talked about this in the workshops over the last several months, is we've got to come up with a strategic plan for fire rescue. We've got to come up with a way to where we're at today, where we're at in the next 6 months, 12 months, and, out to the next 5 years. I know y'all are very aware and all have commented on the need and all that, but I think that would answer some of the questions that y'all are gonna have.
So the question,
long-term.
the question right now on the step pay, basically when you hire into the into our service, the fire medical service, you don't know if you're gonna get a pay raise anytime soon or when that might happen. Is that what we're hearing?
We have not had a pay raise across the board.
Yeah, well, no one did, but we just recently did that.
Exactly.
But the step pay concept would automatically say, you're here, like Mr. Commissioner Rawls said, you want to improve yourself, this is what's going to happen when you do, and every year out, this is what's going to happen there.
Correct.
Those are union conversations that need to take place. Double time, you think that will help? Or do you think that the people behind you will go, what's 1.5 versus double? We're still not going to do it.
Well, I'm hopeful, but I mean, obviously, we're gonna have to try.
I don't see any heads moving back there, so I'll just let it go.
We're, not only the double time, but all of the other things I think are going to help. There's not a fix until we start getting, the applicants that we've got to do, and we've got to be able to compete with everybody around us.
Right.
We've talked about salary studies, we've talked about, bringing everybody, and it's not just salaries are not just a fire rescue issue, although I'm biased, and I would certainly say it's probably the most critical issue we've got, because these folks are out there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year doing it, and it's not something that, if you down a truck, that's a whole geographical area that doesn't have any coverage. We're running out of trucks on a daily basis. We talked about during the budget process about needing to add more trucks, more stations and all. We understand, obviously money and the conversations that we've had, we've got to work towards that, and that's why I think.
Well, and also I want to say, I know this has been mentioned before, and I think almost by every commissioner up here, including Commissioner Rawls when he started, housing. If we could look at our housing and give incentives for that, if they stay with us for a certain amount of period, maybe that's some of the, and even, I don't want to just say for the new people, but the people that we currently have, if there's some way to incentivize them, to hang on a little longer, I think good things are coming. But when we entered into our budget this year and we were given an expectation number that was going to come in, and then all of a sudden we're upside down when everybody makes their request, it's hard to balance the budget like that. And they've been sitting here long enough to hear, where do we find $6 million for bridges? It's all over. It's a fire every time. And Commissioner Turner was right. It never ends around here. But that's just the way government is. So I think we've not swept it under the rug. I think that we've gotten ourselves out of a situation. We're looking for brighter days ahead. And I think anything we can do to incentivize our professionals back there in the back of the room throughout this county and our volunteers would make us a better system in the long run. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope this isn't taken the wrong way. I think this decision is a no-brainer. That's fine. We can talk about how to build the watch at another meeting, because I know we've got to come up with some ways to make this happen. But I think the number one thing we need to do is we need to get our personnel ordinance rewritten, where I don't this is a decision that our administrator should have been able to make tomorrow by himself. Could he, without breaking his budget, because as far as this commissioner is concerned, it's my job to set the budget amount. If it's $10, and if you spend $10, I don't care who you spend it to out there. You have attrition, I don't care if you pay more, if you bonus more, I don't care if you double time them if they volunteer, I don't care, as long as you stay within budget. My point here is 3 months ago, this would never be before the commission, because it was in the power of the administration to be able to make this decision until they figured out that power was given to them erroneously by a previous administrator who just decided to change the rules and stick the new pages in the book without getting them approved. So I'm trying to be as nice as I can, okay? So my point here is we need to work on that and try to get our personnel ordinance where we don't have to bring these kind of decisions to these normal day-to-day micromanaging decisions to this board. I just don't think that's what we should be doing, is micromanaging the county. That the administrator and the deputy administrator and Chief Quinn should come up with these things that they want to changes they need to make. I'll be honest with you, I've never been a fireman, so I don't know about step pay, and I don't know about those kind of things, but I'd be willing to learn if we want to talk about them in some workshop or something. But they got to go negotiate that with the union. You know, I mean, I think that's all part of that. And so, you know, I just don't think these are the things that need to come before the board. It just needs to go straight to staff, like it would have 2 or 3 months ago before they found out this issue about the personnel ordinance. So this commissioner is going to request that we try to move that a little closer to the front of the pack here, because I know it's not going to pass in 15 minutes. So it's going to be like the purchase ordinance was. It's going to take some effort to get through this thing on what we do and don't want to do, because that is the one piece of legislation that's going to set us up for the future. It's important. So it's not going to be a 15-minute deal. So I would request that as soon as possible, we try to start getting through a new personnel ordinance to where, and I'm not saying this because I don't believe this is important, because I do. This didn't need to come here. He could have made this decision yesterday if he'd have had that authority. And, you know, I think we should give it to him. We need to give staff the tools they need to be successful. If we're not gonna do that, then we're messing up. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Administrator Suggs, you have a
Do you
comment?
need a motion on this? I'll be happy to make one.
Yes, sir. If we could get one,
Okay.
that way we
I
can move
move that-
forward.
Okay.
I
We'll
move
get
that
it
we
in discussion.
authorize the administrator to make the decisions concerning this program that Chief Romay has brought to us today, and that the commission is in support of that program.
Second.
Okay, we've got a proper motion by Commissioner Turner, proper second by Commissioner Harvey. Open for discussion. Commissioner Rawls?
I guess, first question is, can I get a definition of the program? Are we talking about double time for overtime?
Yeah, the one he
or
just
for-
laid out to us.
Okay, well, we discussed a lot of things, but, okay, so for clarity, we're talking about allowing you guys to have a double time for non-mandatory overtime. People can sign up on their own. They get double time if they sign up and volunteer.
That was not my motion, no, sir.
But that's what I thought we were discussing.
I understand. Well, I'll straighten out what my motion is. That way you can decide if you want to vote with us or not. My motion is to let the administrator approve this program about the incentives to go to volunteer. And if it takes double time, have at it. Whatever, as long as they stay within the budgeted dollar, that's my motion. Let him go work with the chief and come up with an incentive program of this magnitude. If they change it around a little bit from today, I'm all right with that. I don't need to micromanage everything they do around this county. I don't think that's my job.
Well,
My job is to give approval to.
I'll stand in support of your motion. I have some other questions, if you don't mind. Step and grade is not something that the administrator can just unilaterally do on his own. And I think it should be looked at countywide. So I think it's a conversation that we should put on the table for the commission to
Does
discuss.
that have anything
yeah,
to do
yeah.
with the motion on
No,
the floor,
no, we're
Mr.
definitely
Chairman?
gonna, we're definitely gonna do that.
You jumped on a motion before I had my light lit up, and we just jumped to a motion, and I never got a chance to
Mr.
finish what I
Chairman,
was
point of
saying.
order, a discussion during a motion is supposed to be about the motion, and then we can discuss other things after the motion.
All right, well, let's vote on it, and then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Rawls. Is that okay? Yep. All right, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. All right, Commissioner Rawls?
Where I left off. Stepping grade, I think would alleviate a lot of problems for everybody, every employee in the county, number one. So I understand it. I think if we could have some conversation about it sooner than later. What I really enjoy about this conversation, by the way, is we're talking about next year's budget. We're in October talking about a budget a year from now, and this needs to happen. So congratulations, guys. SHIP grants. We have an enormous amount of SHIP money, going back to what Commissioner Harvey was talking about. And at one point in time, SHIP money was allowed to incentivize critically needed trades, teachers, nurses, paramedics, firefighters, EMTs. I think we should take a look at, and from what I've been told, it's up to this body to decide how we focus that money. So right now, if the focus is housing repair, it's on housing repair. But if we made it on giving an incentive to a firefighter and his family, and they were able to sign an agreement. In the case of my daughter and her husband, they signed, I believe, a 15-year agreement, 15 or 20-year agreement, and got a $20,000 down payment assistance. And that helped them build and buy a house, a brand-new house in Putnam County. Two things happened. They became taxpayers, and they bound themselves to stay in Putnam County for long term. And there's consequences if you don't do that. So I think that's something else that we could look at. I really think that we need to, not just in strategic planning, I think that strategic planning needs to include an element for fire rescue going forward, obviously, but I think the commission, once we put out the BARDIN fire, so to speak, we need to start having maybe some more meetings like this on the third Tuesday, fourth Tuesday, whatever, and focus on fire rescue and EMS and coming up with a solution, because I promise you, 10 years in the business, and I look at Putnam County, and I cannot even begin to understand how he does his job or how those folks do theirs, because I don't understand how they're doing what they're doing with the differences in this group and that group. And I really would love to see, I wrote down here, Putnam County Fire Rescue. I would love to see us get to one coalesced fire rescue system sooner than later, including the volunteers. I'll be meeting with them tonight. I have a meeting with the group tonight that want to continue the conversation. The volunteers are desperate to have a part in this, and because they're getting older and they realize that volunteerism isn't there, and they want to help solve the problem of our fire rescue service. So thank you.
Okay. Anything else from you?
No, sir, I appreciate the sentiments. I know I've talked to each of y'all individually, and also, like I said, at workshops and through the budget process. I know your heart and soul is in public safety, but there's a number of things, along the way. We've got to have these little nuggets to be able to fix issues as they come up, and Mr. Turner's exactly on point. So, thank you.
Okay. Before you sit down, I think I can speak for all the commissioners up here that we definitely value our EMTs, firefighters, whether paid full-time or volunteer, and we know we have a problem with our system, and we need to address it. So hopefully sooner than later, we can dedicate a workshop for this, to address all the issues, because it's, we're addressing some pay issues today, but we need to fill positions. We also have the volunteer side. We also have equipment issues too. So we really need to start looking at this and coming up with some type of plan. Commissioner Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in full concurrence with that statement, but when we do have that meeting, I don't want it to be a meeting just to have a meeting. Now, everybody in this room knows what I'm talking about. So a lot of times we meet just because it's time, we want to have the meeting. So when we do that, I'd like to have some recommendations, some solutions, something other than us just sitting in a room and having another meeting.
Right.
So when you get to the point, you and the administrator and the deputy administrator get to the point where you have some some suggestions, some solutions, some recommendations or something, then fine, I'm willing to sit down and do anything I can to help make our department better. I'm there for you, but I don't wanna have a meeting just to have a meeting.
And if I might, Mr. Chair, Mr. Suggs and Matt and I have had those very conversations over the last several months, and I think we're moving in the right direction to get to where we need to be and to be able to give you some positive, concrete ways to move forward.
Well, if you wanna know how to build something, I can give you recommendations and solutions and possibles, but when it comes to fire, I don't have that background. I need somebody to give me their ideas and their recommendations and their solutions and possible ways to go make it better. And I don't pretend to be a expert in every subject like some people in the world do. But, so that's why I need somebody. I need somebody to help me move in that direction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, Chief, it's no different than we've asked every department head recently. Come up with your plan and bring it to us. Because again, no one here wants to micromanage. We all value all of our employees. And you know, I think this board right now wants to think outside the box more than ever. And I really appreciate that. So I think everything's on the table. And the conversation should be about everything that we can do to make Putnam County better with the employees we have and how to attract more. It's a beautiful place to live, work, and play. We all know that. We all say that. But it really, truly is. And, you know, I was in D.C. recently, and I made a comment. I think I made it to Mr. Suggs. Might have been my wife, too. We were standing there. People honk up there, and they give the finger. And they holler at each other. But I got back home and we honk at everybody to wave. We don't give the finger and we don't holler at people. People are mad. If you've never stood on the corner of D.C. and watched how mad they get, they're fighting mad. We don't do that. We're in Boston. We honk the horn, wave. We say good things about people.
And if the horn honks, we look and say, who the hell was that honking?
That's right. Honked at me twice. That's the kind of area I want to live in, and that's the kind of area, you know, people don't want to live in D.C. because of that. They want to live in an area that they can enjoy life a little bit. And maybe they take a lesser pay, but they enjoy their lifestyle. And why wouldn't you enjoy your lifestyle? So, Chief, everything's on the table. Get with Mr. Suggs and Union, you get with them, and we're looking forward to a bright future here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And add to what Commissioner Harvey said, not about the honking, but get with the union, but get with your people, get with your staff, get with the people that are boots out on the ground, the volunteers also, and get their input. This is a labor of love. This is actually a calling, I really believe, for these people to be in the fire service, police protection, sheriff's office, stuff like that. It's a calling for people to take that career. So and we owe it to them to make our system a lot better than it is now. So please get the input from all of your people, if possible. So, okay. All right, thank you, Quinn. That's it. Okay, Administrator Suggs?
Yes, sir, just 5 more minutes, I promise. Really quickly, we had a conversation with Mr. Robert Bernstein at a workshop about sea level rise. Mr. Bernstein is requesting an opportunity to come back in front of the commissioners at another workshop to continue the discussion. I've reached out to Mr. Bernstein to let him know about the strategic plan process that's coming up, and that'll probably be a more viable option at this point.
No, the comprehensive plan, he can come to those meetings when we go through the comp plan, not the strategic plan.
I meant the comp plan.
That's what I told him.
Yes.
I don't know if I see you in the email. I told him that.
He can come and make his presentation to the planning commission during the process, just like anybody else does. And if the planning commission votes to add it in there, then fine.
Yes, sir. I apologize. I misspoke. I meant comp plans as opposed to strategic plan. But his request is specifically to come back to a workshop with you 5 and.
No, sir, I'm not interested in hearing that same presentation again. I understand that he believes sea level's gonna drown us all in the next few years. But My idea is if we're gonna fix it and it's a real issue, then it needs to be done the
Comp plan.
real way.
Right.
Which is go include it in the comp plan if he can make his case.
I will-
If he's the only one that wants to do it and the planning commission won't vote it in, he's had his day.
I will certainly reiterate that the comp plan update is a position that, in arena for his discussion.
If I may, I actually, that was my response to email him, was to get involved in the comp plan. It's already being addressed by FEMA. We already have minimum levels that we have to build above grade anyway. So I think his concern is that FEMA is not acting fast enough. Therefore, we need to be proactive. But I agree with Commissioner Turner. That's something we can handle in-house via the planning board, make it part of the comp plan, and if the people see it that way, and that's it.
Very good. I'll relay that information. Next is Mr. Ho would like to have a conversation and a presentation about recycling. I think it's a great idea to have this conversation. I think instead of coming in front of the commission at a workshop, maybe sit down with myself and maybe Mr. Tilton and have some conversation before we get to that point. I'll relay that back to him as well. And lastly, gosh, I can't believe we're here. Just a real quick reminder, strategic planning starting November 5th. 5th, 16th, and 21st.
But that's not for us, that's for the
No, so
public.
that's citizens and stakeholders, absolutely. But no, we've been talking about this for a long time. I was talking about this during the interview process. We finally got an opportunity to collectively get together and move this thing forward. Looking forward to having the University of Central Florida Institute of Government come down for these 3 visits with our stakeholders, and then the 2-day back-to-back with our commissioners. It sounds like it's going to be a very lively conversation and a fluid conversation, and just looking forward to getting it done. Thank you for the support on strategic planning.
What dates for us again? I just want to make sure I've got
I
it on the
believe it's
calendar.
December 16th and 17th,
Yes, sir.
and it's 9 to 5 all day and lunch brought in.
So we are still on 16th and 17th? That's
Yes,
our-
sir.
Okay.
Okay? December
Yes,
16th and
I've
17th.
got it. I just want, last time it was kind of a loose number, but, so we're good there.
Yeah, so this will be one of those things that we had talked about a long time. I brought the idea to you, and I'm just happy that you guys support it, and let's get this thing done. Thank
I
you.
think it's imperative.
Okay, Commissioner Turner?
Where we at on our comp plan? When you brought it up, where
The
we
third
at?
Tuesday of this month, I believe we're having a meeting. Is Mr. Brown, you in the room? I believe because it got canceled and moved out because of Hurricane Dorian, I believe it's scheduled for the third Tuesday of November, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Commissioner. We've tentatively scheduled for your third Tuesday workshop to have the consultant here to have a workshop with the Board of County Commissioners. We missed the kickoff meeting because of the emergency, the hurricane and the activation. So we rescheduled it. Staff will get all of you a hard copy of present goals, objectives, and policies as they stand today. We'll get those to you probably within the week, so you will have them plenty of ahead of time to take a look at.
I'd like to have an electronic copy to start
I
with.
can give you that,
I can
too.
read it just fine on the
All right.
computer to start, and then a hard copy to take notes.
Okay, I'll give you
And,
both.
Do we
I'd
have to
like
have
to-
all the
yeah.
elements at one time, or can we decide which elements we're gonna start with and give us 1 or 2 at the time instead of
what-
the whole comp plan? It's that thick.
All I was going to give you is the goals, objectives, and policies, which is not quite that thick, because that's what is adopted. We're working on updating the data and analysis as we speak. We will have probably some preliminary things like populations and.
Wouldn't you say that we needed to start, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that we needed to start this out by giving them some broad direction on what we're thinking, and then before we start changing the goals and the policy, that thing needs to go to the planning commission
Right.
first.
Oh, yeah, this
So,
is just.
I don't know that I need a full, I mean, it'd be nice to have one to start reviewing it, but this commission doesn't need to weigh in on anything other than a broad direction on what we're trying to accomplish, and then let the planning commission do their job, and then us come back afterwards and review it and make any final changes and pass it.
Exactly, and that was the intent, was to get a broad brush direction from the board.
Well, I was
If you have
hoping-
specific issues that you recognize, let us know, and then we can work on those.
What
through the
elements do you need done so you can start rewriting your land development code?
Well, the one that's usually the most important is your future land use element. I mean,
Okay, well, that's where we need to start then, because we
I
need
would
to,
suggest
we
that.
need to get whatever elements you need the most to rewrite your land development code and make them get done first, and then perhaps we can, if the planning commission gets done with those one or two elements first, then you can go ahead, in my opinion, and bring them to us and get them finally approved. That way you can start writing your land code to match those elements.
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the update. Thank you for the update, Mike.
Okay, Commissioner Rawls?
So the kickoff meeting is the third Tuesday of next month.
Yes.
Will we be giving any direction to Mr. Teeples and his, it's still Mr. Teeples, right?
You'll be, well, we'll give you, I mean, we're really looking for feedback from
Okay.
the board at this
Okay,
point.
cool.
Well, we don't want to, give you, I've got perceptions, and I know the consultant now has some perceptions, but we want feedback from you.
This
We don't
update
want-
needs to be commission-driven,
Yeah.
I believe is where it
Yeah.
needs to
So
be.
will we, at that meeting, will we have any input regarding future land use planning?
Get as specific or as general as
Okay.
you want.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
it's up to the board members.
Mr. Chairman, I would certainly recommend in that meeting that we don't get real specific on issues, that we let it go to the planning commission first and do their job, that we try to give them direction changes and tell Brian that we want to, that right now, and I'm not saying that if we don't have something in there like, I think it's in the land code, so this is probably a bad deal, that you can only build one residential property on a parcel of land. That's the most asinine
Well, your
rule I've
ag
ever
one is
heard in my
10,
life, huh?
ag one is 10 acres and ag 2 is 20 acres, so that was my concern, is are
But
we
not
gonna have
only
any?
that, I don't give a damn if you got 5,000
Right, right,
acres. If
right,
it's
you're
one
right,
parcel
you're
of
right.
land, you can't build but one house on
So-
it. That's ridiculous.
That's the question I was asking, is can we give some general direction so they at least maybe take a look at these areas? And you're right. You brought this up 8-10 months ago, a gentleman that had, what was it, 200 acres or something, and he can only build one house on it.
Yeah, without cutting a piece out. And then if you cut more than 3 out, you trip subdivision ordinance, which it should be. I mean,
Right.
if you cut more than some out and it needs to be on a paved road and
I
have
think-
certain utilities, but that's part of the thing, the safety factors that need to be built into a comp plan where we don't have any more interlocking Lake Estates with all dirt roads and trailers everywhere. We can't let that happen again, but we want to make it to where you can go out and develop something, at least on a small level, that build your kid a house, build just different things. Live in one house while you're building another one, and you can't right now,
Well, Mike
not
and I have
without
had
cutting the other one out.
Mike and I've had conversations where you've got the northeast corridor, 207 and 17 north. Most of the lands there are ag 1 and ag 2, so you've got to go to Tallahassee to change the future land use. And
Only on a DRI, I mean, because we can change it here on a small scale, but on a large scale or a DRI, you'd have to take it to Tallahassee.
that one that,
But see, the thing is, I don't know if it's changed yet, and I'm gonna find out during this process, but at one time, you weren't allowed but so many a percentage of how much of the different kind of lands you could have. So you couldn't, otherwise there'd be no Ag 3 anywhere in this county other than in a sure enough silviculture operation out in the middle of nowhere would be the only. But you only allowed so much commercial and so much residential and so much whatever, and back in those days, in the 90s, there was a percentage you went over, and if you didn't, DCA had kicked the whole plan out. Well, DCA ain't around anymore, so
Right.
that's kind of the reason we need to come in and start writing this thing up to where, it would be more advantageous to controlled quality development.
exactly. And what happens within the development. I went round and round with Mr. Gowles about his, and he was wanting straight-in streets with no curb and gutter. And I said, why wouldn't you have curb and gutter? That's what people are wanting. That's a more quality product with sidewalks. And so if we could get that included, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey?
What time is that meeting, Mike? 9 o'clock?
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's a regular third,
It's a regular thing
third
for us.
Tuesday workshop.
yeah.
Is there anything else on that agenda, or is it?
Third Tuesday.
Yes.
It'll be a lunch meeting. Can we put our orders in now?
Yeah, this would be all done.
I honestly wouldn't mind working through lunch, it don't matter to me.
Yeah, what point is the planning commission involved? Will the representative or the chairman of the planning commission need to
They're
be at this
already-
meeting, or they're gonna be at this meeting?
The chair of the planning commission has indicated a desire to be at this meeting, so she
Okay.
probably will be the only one there from the planning commission. The chair is also desirous to discuss the process and with each of you individually. And I've checked with the attorney, and there's not a sunshine issue because it's a different board. So recognize that you probably will be contacted by the chairman of the planning commission.
Who is that?
As long as they don't tell a commissioner what another commissioner said.
Right.
Then it's a violation because they become a
Right.
conveyance.
Right.
But,
Each, like, she
I
can,
think
she
she
can
would-
talk to each one of us one-on-one, but, you know, the main thing here, everybody needs to understand the process. This is very, I mean, the process is very laid out. Brian Teeples or his company, I don't remember the name of it, are gonna come up with a specific set of goals and objectives and changes and what have you. They're gonna take them to the planning commission. The planning commission's gonna approve them and recommend some form of that. It doesn't have to be the exact thing, but hopefully they read them and look at them, and then when they bring them to us, we have another shot at them to make additional changes before it's passed. Does it have to be sent to Tallahassee anymore?
At the end, after, the board will, hopefully in May or June of next year, will, whatever you approve, will have to go to Tallahassee to be reviewed for comments, and then it will come back for final adoption.
Okay, so we'll get EARs from them and they'll bring it back.
Yeah, you'll get, we'll
What-
hear, yeah, they'll be reviewing it.
What year data we're gonna be depending on? What's the most current year data?
I would have to check with Brian and what I've directed him is pull the most recent data that's readily available.
Okay.
So, you know, I can tell you the population projections from Beaver are right now still 2018. They usually, the 2019 count probably won't be out till next year anyway, so we'll use.
We won't be publishing this till next year, so will there be an
Yeah.
opportunity to
Yeah.
include that?
But, you know, we're going to use the most readily available. And if there are specific items that you come across that you want us to address, let staff know. I'll jot those down, and we can take a look at real specific items if you have them.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey?
Real quick, Mike, it might be more helpful if you give us a little synopsis of what you're looking at doing before we might say, hey, would you look at this? And you go, I'm already doing it.
Okay. I mean, I can do that. I
Just
do.
do a little bullet points of these are the areas
Sure,
I see concern about.
Okay,
You've heard us, so
okay.
thank you.
I can provide that.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I think also, if it's possible, you need to go ahead and try to get, you need to go ahead and tell Public Works this is coming, because while they are snowed under right now, we're a director short, project manager short, and not including all the people from there down that we're short. So this is gonna take somebody some time to rewrite that element in that comp plan. So they gonna need all the time they can get.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mike.
Mike, if you'll stay there one more minute.
Administrator Suggs?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to, Mike drafted a letter. You know, we had a property owner contact us about an issue trying to get a variance through and so they can sell their property. We went through, we had discussions at a workshop. Mike was kind enough to draft a letter based on the information. And basically, I just want to give you the bullet points of that so we can just go ahead and get consensus so I can contact these folks by mail and go ahead and get the process going. We're willing to go ahead and do what that we can do to assist them on giving, or not giving, but on the property that they're needing. They're going to have to go through the process of an exempt subdivision application. We'll let them know that. They are already aware of that. I've talked to them briefly. There is a fee associated with that the property owner is going to have to pay us $250. They're going to be required to provide us with a new survey with a legal description so we can take care of the parcel information. Then they're going to need, that will put them in compliance with their setbacks. And we're looking at the value of the land being the just value that's set by the property appraiser's office.
Right.
And whatever the square footage of the cut-out portion for the new legal description is, we would then charge them whatever the square foot price is based on the just value to the property appraiser's office. And right now, that's coming up to around $11,300 and something dollars. So it looks like it's going to probably cost them somewhere in the neighborhood of about $12,000 to get their issue corrected, an issue that was created by the property owner, not the county.
Right.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Do they have to take part of that, of our lot from front to back all the way to the river, or can they just go around their house to
They
the
could-
3 foot and
Yeah,
just
they
get
could
their
just
setbacks?
go around the area that
I
they
need
need.
to
It's
tell
up-
them that, because instead of 11,000, they're probably talking a couple of thousand.
Yeah.
Because they don't need but just a few square foot to get around the house.
Yeah.
I don't have no issues with that. I'm going based on the information I was
I
provided, so we'll
understand,
do
but,
that.
I mean, they.
I would like
they
to sit
need
down with them.
understand that I don't think that's necessary, and they're just wanting to sell the house, so.
The biggest thing is we actually had contact yesterday. I didn't get the contact. It was made after, I had already left, but, so I will reach out to them. I'd like to sit down in the office with them and go over everything. We can show,
Can I ask a
I
the
just
current
think-
piece of property.
I just think it needs to be brought to their attention
wanna-
that we're not making them buy that whole strip of land. All we're saying is if you they're 10 inches over, so they got to buy a couple of feet or something. All they got to do is get around the garage that happens to be 10 inches over the line.
Yeah, we're just looking to bring them into compliance is what we're
Right,
trying to
yeah.
do. We're not, yeah,
Leave it up
exactly.
to them.
Can I ask a question real
Yeah,
quick?
Commissioner Ross?
The property that we own, can it ever be used for a public use, for a park or anything?
That's,
Okay,
yeah.
so, maybe Commissioner Turner's right. Maybe it's in our best interest that we only sell them what they need and keep as much riverfront as possible.
I don't disagree with that. This is a rudimentary type of
Okay.
conversation to get this thing started. This is the what-if scenario. This
Yeah.
is what it may be. Now we can have a conversation of breaking it down. I haven't met with them other than a 5-minute conversation at the front counter
Right.
to assist them through the process. The biggest thing is, for everybody to understand here, is we're working with them
Yeah.
very directly to assist them through an issue that wasn't created by us, but we're going to find them a solution.
Government is the answer, I'll be darned.
How about
This time
that?
I've been telling people it's not the answer, and here it is.
I'm the government, and I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you just need approval, to move forward with that? Okay, everybody okay with that? Okay, all right. All right, anything else?
I'll be looking forward to see what comes out of that meeting that Commissioner Harvey's gonna have on November 4th with other people about all these supposedly hundreds of lots that we own around the county that we may or may not be able to sell. I'll be very interested. Ones that were given to the county by Interlochen Lakes Estates back many, many years ago, and there seems to be differences of opinion on what we can do with them and what we can't do with them. And a lot of them are water access lots around the county that are non-conforming, and when you don't really have access, you just own the lot next to the water. So I'm gonna be very interested to see the information that comes out of that meeting. I just didn't want this one to have to wait to that point. These people are wanting this done. So thank you for moving forward with that, Mr. Suggs.
You're welcome, sir. My pleasure.
Okay. Commissioner comments, we'll start with Commissioner Harvey.
I have none, sir.
Commissioner Turner,
I have none.
Commissioner Goddard.
My only comment is I was in Washington DC, and it sure is nice to be home.
Did you get the figure? Did they wave to you?
Oh, yeah, they do a lot of waving.
Commissioner Ross.
I just got one thing, that is, that two of the houses that I built in the past 6 or 8 years sold in the past couple of weeks. And one closed and one is moving to closing. One of them sold at $92 a square foot heated and cooled, and one at $110 a square foot heated and cooled. So I was absolutely floored. I felt like we really underbid these jobs, but we made our profit and overhead. But the point is that real estate is going sky high. I've never heard those kind of prices in Putnam County. but you've got two in a row. And one was 1310 heated and cooled, and the other one was 1800 heated and cooled. So that's the sweet spot and that's what I'm getting a lot of lately, is people coming in wanting to buy those type of houses that size. One of them, the 1800 didn't even have a garage, so good news for Putnam County, we got more taxable income.
Good deal.
Yeah, and in South Putnam, there's just one particular contractor that said he's working on 2 houses and has another one ready to go. So there is a little activity in South Putnam. I have one thing we know about Rule Days. I forgot to bring this up at our last meeting. Dana Jones needs to know if any of the commissioners and their wives will be attending the reception the night before the event. I can't remember exactly what day it is.
January.
It's January 15th or something like that. So I need to know if,
Planning on it.
okay, so everybody,
15th is a Wednesday, that's the reception, and the 16th is when we're,
I believe that's what it is, yeah. So we're not cooking, no, they've hired a caterer. So we'll just be up there probably, talking to the senators and representatives, stuff like that. So no, they hired a caterer
who
to
is
do
they?
that.
Who?
The person that's in charge of it,
The other counties?
other counties,
Okay.
yeah. So I just need to know a show of hands, so I can tell Dan.
They
So
can't bring
two-
their A game?
I plan
Everybody
on
bringing
being
your wives coming?
I'm assuming so at this point, yes, sir.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
2, 4,
I'll plan on it right
everybody?
now.
Okay, all of us then? Okay, all right, I'll put that in. Okay, any further business to come before this board? We stand adjourned.